IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are back to talk some Notre Dame. We got championship weekend coming up this weekend. We got Notre Dame with a big commitment last night. We got another top target that's set to commit, next Wednesday. Yep. We got portal kids on campus this weekend. We got a Notre Dame commit on campus this weekend. The coaches are out on the road seeing their committed players and some other kids. It is not an offseason, Ryan. There is no offseason in college football, and I love it because it keeps us busy for 12 months out of the year. So today, Ryan, we're going to have a little bit of a fun topic, and we're going to talk about sort of Notre Dame's bowl strategy and what should it be. Obviously, we'll start spending time next week kind of looking into Notre Dame's bowl opponent, and we'll talk recruiting. We'll have a signing day preview coming up. I have tons of recruiting stuff as we get closer to signing day, which is now 19 days away, Ryan. It's your first signing day with Notre Dame. Because last year's February signing day didn't count because, they were done. So, Ryan, it was interesting last year when Marcus Freeman took over at Notre Dame, and we're almost to the 1-year anniversary of Marcus Freeman being hired last year. But when he was hired last year, Ryan, you kind of, a matter of fact, it's tomorrow. Well, actually, no, hold on a second. No, this is the 1-year anniversary. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of when the news broke, but the actual official formal date is not there yet. So, we broke the news, by the way. Just wanted to make sure people know that. It was on the Notre Dame, the Irish Breakdown message board first before it was anywhere else. So the strategy he had last year, which I actually embraced and understood, especially it was a Fiesta Bowl. It was you're taking over another team. They went with the strategy of we're going to play the veterans. We're going to play the seniors. This is for the seniors. Marcus Freeman said this, kind of going into the game. This is for the seniors. We're going to play for the seniors and all of that. And they did that. And it had no bearing on the outcome. I'm not saying it led to this. It just, that was a strategy. And it was fine with that. It made a lot of sense. This year we're entering a little bit of a different situation, Ryan, because from things I've been told, a lot of the veterans who are draft eligible are not going to play in the bowl game. I don't expect Michael Mayer to play. I don't think Jason Adamiola. I don't know if he'll play or not. I don't expect Jarrett Patterson to play. And Cam Hart's hurt. He won't be able to play. I think we'll see several veterans not play in this bowl game. And so then you got to ask yourself, okay, do you adopt the same strategy you had last year and say, hey, look, the veterans that are here, we're playing for them? Or do you go with we're going to make a youth movement thing? So we're going to kind of state the case for each one and the pros and cons of each one, and then kind of say, here's what we think that they should do. And I think that's what we're going to discuss today. And then after that, Ryan, we are going to dive into the conference championship games. So we're going to talk about those as well, which will be a lot of fun. So let's begin kind of with this, employing the same strategy from last year. What are some of the pros of that? I think number one, Ryan, is if you believe that the veteran players were the ones that gave you your best chance to win during the regular season, you're probably going to think they give you the best chance to win during the postseason. And winning this bowl game is very important. Very important. Notre Dame has to win this bowl game. And I don't care who they play. They have to win this bowl game. And so you need to make sure that if you're Notre Dame and you're the coaching staff, you're putting your best foot forward and as best you can with the resources you're going to have, because you're going to have some players out, and say, hey, look, first and foremost, we have to win this football game. And I think that's going to be a big thing. You have to win this football game, Ryan. That's no matter what else we're going to talk about today for Notre Dame, Ryan, that's got to be priority number one.
Yep, I think so. Just fundamentally, I believe this anyway, and I think you do too, Brian. There is a massive difference, in my opinion, between 9-4 and 8-5.
Oh gosh, right? Perception-wise, big time.
Because then you could paint it. Yes, there was a couple blunders upon the way, but there was few plays here and there from getting to 10 wins to being in the playoff hunts, all that good stuff, right? And also, I think that the matchup Notre Dame potentially is going to have, if it is the Gator Bowl against an SEC opponent, I feel like that has a lot of impact on this program from certain vantage points, right? One, the SEC is perceived as the best conference in college football. And that perception from people, although we can, push back on it and make cases for other conferences and, maybe the middle to bottom of the SEC isn't as strong as maybe it was a few years ago. Like, there's a lot of things we could poke holes in. But regardless, the perception is that the SEC is by far the strongest conference in college football. So Notre Dame getting a victory in a bowl game against South Carolina, Mississippi State, whoever it ends up being, right? I think is a big opportunity just from the perception side of things. And then especially if you're going against a South Carolina, and again, we don't know 100% know who Notre Dame is going to face in the bowl game, but if it is a South Carolina, for instance, then you have the additional layers of they are a team that utilizes NIL, and you have the opportunity to maybe poke some holes and say, hey, NIL is fine. Kids can make money off but we're talking about the improper benefit part of everything, right? And the teams that are using that as a tactic to gain and acquire talent, development is still key and is still king over that conversation. So I think for all avenues, not only is it just fundamentally better to be 9-4 than 8-5 for one. I think the opportunity to play an SEC's team, to have that perception, a part of the game, to maybe potentially play against a team that utilizes NIL in the ways that it's not designed for. I think all those things together, you have a lot of reasons to play in this football game and a lot of reasons to want to come out and win, and not only win, but potentially dominate if you can. I think that this is a big point for Notre Dame where you can kind of look at it and say, hey, end the first year under Marcus Freeman off right. Let's go into 2023 with some momentum. And you have a lot of younger guys that played this year that are now going to be sophomores, now going to be juniors, and have an opportunity now to take a huge step forward. So I think it is fundamentally important that Notre Dame wins this game, in my opinion.
Ryan, I'll say this point too. It's not even just about winning; it's also about not losing. And what I mean by that is, you're trying to establish something. We're a program that's on the verge of taking that next step, and the perception is that, and not only 8-4 versus 9-5, but the other part of it is, it's also about kind of how do you do that when you lose to a middle of the road SEC team, which is what Notre Dame is likely going to face in the bowl game. How can you say, hey, we're on the verge because you just went out there and lost in a game to South Carolina or Mississippi State or Kentucky, something like that, because you played a bunch of young guys. So I think it's not even just about it's also partly the gain you get from the win, as you explained already, but it's also the double-edged sword of, but a loss is even more problematic than a win would be positive because of who you'd be playing in. You lost to a middle-of-the-road SEC team. Don't talk to me about you know what I mean? And I think that's another part of it too. I think the other positive is obviously there's a precedent set that bowl games mean something. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a thought of in the future, the veterans will stay because you've established a precedent that bowl games mean something. Now, I think you and I would hope that we don't have to worry about this for several years because Notre Dame's in the playoff every year. That would be nice. And I would like to see Notre Dame get a playoff berth before it expands to 12. So I think getting them to the playoff next year would be really big for Notre Dame, is doing it before it expands to 12, but it's going to be a lot easier for Notre Dame to get there. But I think that's a big part of it too, Ryan, and also the momentum of going in. So if you think playing the veterans gives you the best chance of winning, and we'll debate if that's actually the case, then I think you have to play the veterans. And then establishing a precedent for the future of, hey, guys, if you guys stick around, we're going to make this about you. And I think that's another positive to possibly playing the veterans.
You know what else this game is too, Brian, is it's a chance, because I know guys opting out of bowl games is kind of a universal national thing, right? Like, this isn't just a Notre Dame thing that we're talking about here with Michael Mayer potentially not playing, or maybe Isaiah Foskey and like those types of guys. But I also think it's a testament and a kind of a point for Notre Dame to make that, like, hey, even with the guys that are dudes, whether it is the other veterans on the roster or it is a youth movement, I think there is something to be said about, hey, we down a couple of our best players and we're still showing you that we have a lot of talent on this roster, right? So, whether it is the veterans or the young guys, I think that you have an opportunity to show that, like, hey, Notre Dame has some guys just all around this roster, right? Like, they have some dudes. They're building something. It's not just a team that is maybe average in most spots and then just has a couple stars, right? Like, they have some substance to this roster that I think that they have an opportunity to show that as well. If a couple of the veterans and a couple of the key leaders on Notre Dame do not play in this football game.
I think the negatives to this, obviously, Ryan, is it's about development. I mean, you continued that you would miss an opportunity to have 15 practices plus a game to really do some evaluating with guys that are going to be part of your team next year. And when we're talking about veterans, we're talking about not playing guy. We're talking about the guys that won't be at Notre Dame next year. Like, you're not going to bench Zeke Correll for the bowl game to give Pat Coogan a shot to see how Pat Coogan does when Zeke Correll's coming back next year. We're talking about, do you play Josh Lugg? Do you, and in some instances, I think there's some merit to, it's not just starting, but it's also where I think you could get into some interesting stuff about the guys that are coming back is, okay, do we play Prince and Jalen Sneed and Junior and Nolan Ziegler a little bit more and still start the veterans, but play these kids a little bit more? That's the other part of this too. Or if we're going to, play the veterans, we're going all in, we're going to go try to win. We're going to do a same rotation we would if it was the regular season. I think that's part of it too. So second part of this, Ryan, is the youth movement aspect of it. Right. And the negatives we talked about before. You didn't think these kids were ready to be your guys during the regular season. So clearly you're not putting your best foot forward in an attempt to win, perception-wise, perceivably so, right? The positives for me, though, are you're starting to build for next season, right? We've talked the negatives we discussed. The negatives are the opposite of what we discussed in the other one, which is, the perception that you get from a win and all the positive comes from winning. Now, that doesn't mean you can't win if you go. It's like making a youth movement doesn't mean you're going to lose. You're just you're accepting loss because you're going to put the young guys out there. Whoever they play is probably going to lose guys to the not playing in the bowl game as well. But if you're a situation where you're Notre Dame, like maybe some of those older guys play, like Foskey, Mayer, those guys, if you're playing LSU. But if you're playing South Carolina or Mississippi State, they're probably not going to care.
Right.
But the kids at South Carolina and Mississippi State are going to be like, wow, we get a shot to play Notre Dame. There may be a shot that some of those guys decide to play. And I think that's one of the risks. But you feel like the perception would be, and I think some people in the chat and you and I may argue that maybe this is what you should have done anyway, but that's a different part of the conversation, like during the regular season. But the perception is you're not putting your best foot forward and you have the losses. But the opposite of that is, yes, but let's say that they're going to look, we're starting Tobias Merriweather in this game. Braden, we love you. We love everything you did for us. But look, we're Matt Salerno. We love you and we love everything you did for us. But we're starting Braylon in this game, or we're starting Tobias in this game, and he's going to be a focal point. And Tobias has 15 practices to get ready to go and see what you can do. Because, I wrote an article the other day, Ryan, saying that don't be shocked if Tobias Merriweather is a breakout star for Notre Dame next year. Like, I think he's got the talent to do so. Some of the people I've talked to, around the program feel that he has the ability to be that kind of guy, like quickly. We've seen it before. We saw Equanimous St. Brown go from one catch for 8 yards in 2015. That's a true freshman to, was it 59 for over 909 touchdowns in only 12 games in year 2 in 2016 as a true sophomore. And I would argue that Tobias has every bit the talent, if not more so, than what Equanimous St. Brown had. So you say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play the younger guy, and whether or not it pays off in the bowl game, it certainly pays off looking into next season, because you got a chance to really evaluate some of these younger players, which gives you an opportunity to truly open up competition in the spring. If you play Jalen Seed more in this game, if you play Nolan Ziegler more in this game, if you play other guys more in this game that maybe didn't play a lot, now all of a sudden you can legitimately say you guys are going to get a shot to compete for a starting role this spring, and mean it, because they step in if they play well, especially, and not just play well in the game, but I think you learn even more about them in the 15 practices leading up to the game, Ryan, than even more than you would just in that one game. Although the game is certainly an important part of that. So I think that's the positive style to that, Ryan, is you get a chance to really evaluate some young kids who maybe didn't get a lot of reps during the season. Maybe some of them were on scout team during the season. I think there's a lot of merit to that. And there's two ways to look at it, Ryan. I want to get your thoughts on it. One is you can give them a ton of reps in practice early and then start to gear up towards the veterans for the game, or you just go with this the whole way. I think there's merit to both of those as far as giving those young guys reps. But for the discussion purposes here, we're talking about just going with them and getting them ready for go playing the game. So, I think that's obviously for me, Ryan, the big positive is that work is invaluable for those young kids.
Well, I think from a fan perspective, it's just kind of a glimpse into the future, which is always nice. You kind of get a little sense of what can you expect next season? What can you expect this off season? What are the future of Notre Dame football? I feel like I write almost every week, and it's something where it's exciting. And as a fan perspective, I completely get it. But I think the bigger thing that you hit on already is that it's an evaluation opportunity for the coaching staff. Like practice can tell you a lot about a player. There's no doubt. But we know, having been coaches before, right? There's some guys that aren't great practice players, but when the lights turn on, they're just a different animal, right? They show you something different. And until you see the live bullets, there's a part of the evaluation process you don't fully get without seeing them under the lights on a Saturday in a big game. And obviously, who knows what day the bowl game will be on. I'm just, for argument's sake, I'm saying Saturday. But I think that for me, I think there's a lot of merits to the potential of having the young kids show out. And I agree that I think both ways that you attack they both have merit to them. I agree 100%. I'm more, just in my own personal opinion, I'm more what we're going to do is what we're going to do. And that's our message to it, right? Like we're not going to, just go all in and then flip the script last second or whatever. Because if the young kids are going to play, I want them to know that they're going to play the whole time, then prepare like they're going to play, and then let's see what the final result is. But I will say this, Brian, the one negative that I think could happen here, if you do have the youth movement, is if you go into the game with the youth movement aspect and your mindset is exactly what I just said, that you're going to play the young guys, let them make mistakes, let them make plays, let them work it out, because we know that the adjustment period is needed. If the game goes south at any points, right, during the stretch of the game where it's just not working out, some of the young guys are just not ready, it's just not that good a situation. If you do have a moment where you're like, all right, maybe I should get a couple of these veterans back in here to kind of rescue the day a little bit, I do think that it could be a little detrimental to some of the young guys, right? Because that's kind of like a mental block.
I don't think it would work either. Like those veterans are not going to be locked in. I think the way you would do that is if you're going to start the veterans, but then just work the young guys in a ton. I think that's the only way that could work. So there's really, at the end of the day, Ryan, 3 strategies. There's keep doing what you're doing. That's it. B is, hey, let's just give a lot of these young kids more reps. We're going to play Tobias more. We're going to play Jalen Sneed more. We're going to play Junior more. We're going to play Nolan Ziegler, period. We're going to play certain Jaden Mickey in the slot for the bowl practices because we think he could be a guy there next year, and Tariq's been banged up and we need to protect him so he can be healthy for the draft prep. Those are the things that I think you look at and you say those kind of go half and half. They're just going to rotate in more. Or the third option is just we're going full Tobias, you're starting, Jaden, you're starting, Xavier Watts, you're starting, Jalen Sneed, you're starting at Rover. And then the other guys may rotate in. I don't think you do it across the board. I think you're doing it with guys that you think have a shot to be starters for you in a battle next year. I think that's the other thing too, is we're not talking about benching every single veteran and putting in young guys. We're talking about positions where A, you've got guys that have no eligibility left after this game, or B, guys where younger guys are going to have a chance to push veterans in the spring. Now, in those situations, it may not even be fair to the veterans to just bench them and play the young guys. It's more of we're going to split reps in practice and in games. So it's a little bit of a twofold thing. For me, I look at it and I think that's where, I look at it and say that's kind of the direction I personally would go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's no wrong answer to the philosophy that you attacked. It's just whatever your philosophy is, though, I feel like you need to be laser focused with making that plan to fruition, right? I don't think that there's any backpedaling. I don't think that you can quickly hit a 180 and try to turn something different, change something up a little bit. For me, it's whatever you're going to do, whatever Coach Freeman's ideas and the staff's ideas are to attack this is what they need to stand by and to live by and to die by, right? Like, I think that that's the biggest thing for me is that I'm excited to potentially see some of the younger guys, but I more than anything just want to see a coaching staff that has a firm plan in place and is not going to backpedal from it, right? See it all the way through is the biggest thing that I want to see in this football game, because I think that there are some detriment that could happen if you do backpedal at any points. Whatever you're going to do, go all in with it.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at, Ryan. Let's talk about this. Who are some young guys that you definitely would say this applies to? And let's start on offense.
Yeah. I mean, offensively for me, you mentioned the wide receivers already, right? I think that for me personally, with what onset I would want to see, I definitely still want to honor the veterans that have kind of gotten you there, right? So I wouldn't do a complete youth movement, but the young guys that I do want to see in this situation are one, Tobias Merriweather, if healthy, right? I mean, he's obviously been dealing with a concussion. As long as he is,
and as far as I've been told, Ryan, he has been cleared, to play in the bowl game. So,
and as long as he's clear and he's ready to go, he's going to play a ton of snaps for me, and I'm going to see what we saw in spurts, what we saw in glimpses. I want to see on a much higher volume perspective, right? And I don't know if there's going to be some limitations to how many snaps he can play. Like, I don't know about that because concussions can be a tricky thing at times. But I think this is the game where you see Tobias. Deion Colsey's already been, getting more and more snaps as the season's going on. So I think that this is just a continued maturation of a Deion Colsey to kind of finish his season strong, show the progress that he's made. And you might get a little glimpse of what you're going to see next year, Brian, with the, if the Notre Dame does opt to be more of the twin towers outside and kind of build, a little bit more size to the perimeter. So you could see Colsey, you could see a Merriweather. Jaden Thomas has earned his reps inside at slot. I want to see a ton of him because obviously just being a sophomore, he's going to be back next year. I want to see Lorenzo kind of mix in inside at slot as well. So you got your two sophomores we're mixing in there. Lorenzo, I think, can mix and match a little bit inside and outside depending on what you're trying to do offensively and what your kind of end game is. Running game wise, nothing really changes, right? Like I want to still see Audric Estime, Logan Diggs, Chris Tyree, if he is, comfortable and a part of the plan moving forward. Like I want to see Chris Tyree in the football game. Depending how the game goes, hopefully Jabron Bain could get a couple touches because I know he got a couple early in the season, but let's start to see him maybe, because I know he was on kickoff a couple games ago, but let's see if, maybe he's healthy enough to get a couple touches, see what he has there. And for me, I think that quarterback is going to be an interesting one for me, Brian, because everyone's been clapped with what's happening right now. Right. Yes, I get it. So,
and by the way, we're kind of being hesitant to talk about it right now. I know the report is out there. We're very well aware, but we're Notre Dame reporters, and there's a protocol that we have to follow with checking sources and different things like that. And so, we're working on it. But yes, please continue, Ryan. We can do the what ifs, but yes,
I was gonna say, regardless of what's happening right now, potentially, I still wanted to see Steve Angeli play in this football game in some capacity, right? Like I want to see, because we know next year what's going to happen, right? There's going to be a transfer portal quarterback. Tyler Buckner's hopefully going to get back. Kenny Mitchell's going to come, and there's a possibility that unless Angeli takes a nice step forward, he might get buried a little bit. I mean, it's potential for happening, right? So let's see what he has. Let's give the kid some live bullets. Let's see whether it's in a reduced or an expanded role. Let's see some parts of what he has. And then if you have a Jared Patterson not playing, I'm not saying I would, Andrew Kristofic, I think, deserves an opportunity to potentially play a football game because he could be back next year as well. But, I mean, do we give Billy Schrauth some opportunities to play inside a little bit, a little mix in? So
now that one's going to be interesting, Ryan, because that's one where a veteran is going to have a chance to compete for that starting job next year in Andrew Kristofic. And it's almost kind of like if you don't start and play Andrew. Now I'm okay Okay, so real quick, I did get clearance. Drew Pine will not be playing in the bowl game. So that is the deal. So again, we're just trying to get some confirmation on all this kind of stuff. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, but to the guard point, Brian, before I guess we tilt to the quarterback position a little more, if the plan is next offseason, though, for it to be a Kristofic versus Billy Shrouth versus some other combination of interior players, is this an opportunity to kind of see where the starting point is for those two players going into the offseason? You know, is it like a kickoff point to seeing, you know, what Shrouth and what Kristofic can potentially bring to the table, and then that kind of just eases right into spring to be a full-time battle? Like, that's kind of where my thought process goes.
Yep. So the other guard spot, Ryan, for me is a little interesting, right? And y'all just give me a second. We'll get to the quarterback thing. I got to get the article on it written first, Ryan. So if you could do me a solid, Ryan, is kind of go through a couple, because tight end's another one. Like, that's another one that I'm curious about. So if you can kind of finish out the guard conversation and go to the tight end stuff, and I'm going to pound out this article, get a little bit more conversation, confirmation on some things, and then we'll dive into all this.
Sounds good, man. This is the life of media right here, folks.
Love it.
You're trying to do something.
I would rather have it no other way.
Yes.
No other way.
Oh man, it's so funny. I love the nights where, you know, breaking news happens and I'm just like trying to eat or something. I'm like, I guess I'm not eating tonight. Let's just throw it on the back burner. But yeah, offensive guard position
it reminds me real quick. Just last year, I was sitting on the couch with my wife having dinner, watching a Hallmark movie, and all of a sudden I'm getting texts from sources and people saying, "Hey, Brian Kelly's not coming back." I'm like, "Well, honey, dinner's over." So I got some work to do.
Ruth Chris Steakhouse next week on me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Hey, Brian, sorry, you're not getting paid this month. I got to take my wife to Ruth Chris. Sorry.
I mean,
anyway, please continue.
I wouldn't be happy, but Ruth Chris is really delicious. So I would understand for a split second until I can't pay my mortgage, and then that would be a little bit different.
Exactly. So please continue with right guard with the lug. I think that's another interesting one. And maybe it's not starting a different guy, but maybe rotating. I think there's a couple different options. What are your thoughts on that plus tight end?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the guard position just in general for me, because like I said, if it becomes a situation where Jared Patterson isn't playing and you have the opportunity to play some combination of Andrew Kristofic or Billy Shrouth, and maybe there's a little bit of a rotation, or if there's not, and your thought process is, let's go to the youth movement. Josh, you did a lot of great things for us. You started multiple positions in your Notre Dame career. We appreciate you very much, but let's start getting Billy Shrouth some run. Let's start seeing, you know, I don't know how Ty Chan has been developing, but if you want to throw a Ty Chan in there and see if it's a sink or swim opportunity for him as a bigger guy that physically looks just about ready to play, right? So getting a couple of those guards, some opportunities, I think could be very interesting, I think, again, it could kind of kick off a little bit of the offseason guard battle that we're going to see, because regardless of this game, you're going to lose Josh Lugg. You're losing Jared Patterson. There's going to be two starting guards next year for Notre Dame. And whether that is a combination of Andrew Kristofic or Billy Shrouth or Ty Chan or Charles Jagassar, whoever the heck it is, right? You have an opportunity to kind of get a little glimpse of what it possibly could be. So a little bit of early battle kind of trending now into the spring practices, well, into the winter and then into the spring practices, I think could be an interesting kind of evaluation point. You know, what does Billy look like in this final game of the season without, you know, with a limited heads up as far as like, you're the guy now, right? What does Andrew look like coming back from being a starter, not being a starter, and then coming back into the limelight? Did you take the offseason, or did you take the season seriously to say, hey, I'm not going to sulk. I'm going to get better as a football player each and every day under Harry Heaston. And if he does, I mean, he's talented enough to potentially be a starting player for Notre Dame next year, in my opinion, right? So I think guard is a tremendous opportunity. Then tight end is really interesting, because without Michael Mayer in the fold, all you have is younger guys, because Kevin Bauman is injured as well. So, I mean, you are working now potentially with a Holden Stace, with a Mitchell Evans, with a Kane Barong type of situation. without Eli Raritan obviously available due to injury as well. So do you steer into maybe playing a little more 11 personnel, or do you stick to, hey, we've been a heavy 12 personnel team a lot of the season. Are we going to maintain that in this football game? Or is there a tight end that you want to take a look at as more of the high volume getter, and then you mix in the other two into the conversation? But regardless, I think tight end is especially interesting because not only will there be a lot of opportunities, I also think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities to assess different skill sets that each one of them have. Because the cool thing about Holden Stace, Ed Mitchell-Evans, and Kane Barong, for instance, is that they're incredibly different football players. I mean, Mitchell-Evans is a 6'6", 250-plus pound former high school quarterback that is growing and developing into a nice blocking tight end, right? A big body, big frame, can win above the rim. That's kind of his style. Then you have a Holden Stace, who's more of a 6'4", 230-something pound tight end right now, who has a pretty dense body. He's going to kind of be a squatty build. Looks a little bit like Tommy Tremble as far as his body type perspective, but he kind of gives you a little more, I think, upside as far as the versatility he can play, right? Like he can do stuff in line. He can do stuff as a wing. He can work outside into the slot a little bit. He has a decent amount of receiving upside, I believe, or a good amount of receiving upside at the position as well. So you kind of combine those guys with Kane Barong, who you haven't seen at all, as a more of a 6'3", 240-pound H-back, right? A guy that's a little bit more of a movement-based player, but also has good effort in the run game. He can block his butt off a little bit when he gets the opportunity, but he's much more of that movement-based mismatch weapon in the passing game. So seeing Mitchell Evans, seeing Holden Stace, seeing Kane Barong in increased snaps, potentially seeing them work together, I think is an intriguing situation for Notre Dame, because if you're going to stick to your guns next year, if you're Tommy Rees and say, hey, we have tight ends, we have a lot of talent, we're going to stick to a lot of our 12 personnel stuff, it might be a combination next year of a Holden Stace, of a Mitchell Evans. So let's get another early glimpse as far as what can the potential look like next year, what can the future look like. So I think for guard and tight end, Brian, although it's a little different, I think that this could be a nice launch point to the offseason as far as what do we have right now, what's the starting points, and where do these guys, where can they go, and where are they going to go from the season? It's almost just like an early glimpse into a spring preview almost for me, which is interesting.
Brian, I think the thing that I would say about tight end too is if you don't expand the depth chart, you just kind of go with Mayer and Stace, which is what you've had working with Michael Mayer. You could also still do some 12 personnel, but this could be an opportunity also to say, hey, look, we don't need to necessarily peel back the reps of Braden Lindsey. We're just going to play Tobias more because we're going to play more 11 personnel. And then also say, hey, look, let's really work on the 21 personnel stuff, because there's a lot of things you can do in that regard to go there too. So maybe they don't expand to Kane Barong. Maybe it's more of, we're going to do more 11, which then gives certain guys an opportunity to get more reps, which then means we can do some other things. And so I think that could be part of the decision-making process too, Ryan, is going with some of the different personnel groups, which means you don't have to necessarily expand the tight end role if you're not comfortable with that.
Right. And also, I mean, you're going to be down numbers at tight end, right? Regardless of like just the usage conversation as far as like which tight end is your premier 11 personnel tight end, or are you going to run 12 personnel? I mean, Brian, you have a situation now where you have 3 healthy tight ends, right? And one of those healthy tight ends hasn't played this year, right? I mean, Kane Barong, if he's played, he's only played a sparing amount of snaps this year
exactly
in a reserve role. So you have 3 healthy bodies with Michael Mayer potentially not playing, with Eli Raritan being injured, with Kevin Bauman being injured. You don't have a ton of healthy bodies at tight end. So, I mean, I would think that if it was me, I think I would be a lot more 11 personnel in this game, right? And give the tight ends a rotation instead of maybe seeing them together, because you have to think like you still need to play a football game, right? Attrition's a part of the game. And if you only have 3 healthy bodies at tight end, that's not a lot of options to work with.
I would like to see Kane Barong get a shot. I would. I'd like to see him get a chance to play. Ryan, we'll kind of dive back into the defense here in a little bit, but let's break away and talk about the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
Because obviously Drew Pine has decided to enter the portal. I have reached out to several sources. on this. I've heard back from some, and what we were told is that basically he is not going to play in the bowl game, and that he was essentially informed that Notre Dame was going to go the transfer portal route and bring in a transfer quarterback, but that guy was going to have to come in and compete. That guy's not going to be handed the job. They're not promising any of the quarterbacks a starting opportunity. They're going to have to compete. They're going to have to compete with Tyler. They're going to compete with Drew. And that Drew was told he had earned the opportunity. He had earned the right to be a part of that battle, but instead he decided to go the transfer portal route. So that was pretty much what it came down to. So he will not play in the bowl game. Who plays in his place raises an interesting conversation. Obviously, we don't know the health of Tyler Buckner. We don't know if he's going to be healthy enough to play a full game and now what we do know is that Tyler Buckner had been practicing for the last 2 weeks, at least coming into the last game of the season. What I'm also able to confirm based on stuff that I was told and sent earlier in the day, he is definitely practicing in the bowl prep yesterday. Yesterday was the first bowl practice, and Tyler was definitely practicing going through 7-on-7 and different reps during that as well. So he's clearly healthy enough to be out there in pads practicing. What we don't know is, okay, is he ready for contact? Because there's one thing to be out there and say, hey, he's out there practicing and he's going through the motions because I believe he hurt his non-throwing shoulder. It's one thing to say, I'm good to go do all this and getting the throwing stuff done, but I'm not in position to take contact. That's what we don't know, and that's what we're still trying to confirm. But if there, Marcus Freeman has said that they hope that he'll be prepared for that. But I think at this point in time, the first thing that Notre Dame needs to do is you're going to ramp up the reps for Steve Angeli. And the people that have wanted Steve Angeli for a chance to play, I think are going to get that. And you know what? Like you had mentioned earlier, Ryan, good. Good. It'd be good for him to say, hey, look, do you have a future here at Notre Dame? And this is your first chance to kind of prove that.
It's going to be a weird situation though, Brian, because the fan in me for a second would love to see Tyler Buckner in this football game. I would. But the realist and the analyst in me is like, a lot of his game is predicated on being a physical runner, right? Like that is part of his game. That's part of his style. And are we going to put him in a football game where he's not comfortable playing in his own skin? That he's not comfortable doing? I don't know the answer to that, right? It's like a little difficult to understand.
Sorry, I just had a friend of mine text me, said, hey, are you playing in the bowl game? Are you playing quarterback in the bowl game? Like, no, bro, sorry. Yeah, so anyway, please. The thing about Tyler, though, is the reason that this could work if he's healthy enough to take a hit, but maybe, if he's healthy enough, if he's cleared for contact now, I think what you would have to do is, Ryan, is you'd have to say, Tyler, for the bowl game, you're a pocket guy. You can scramble if things break down, right? We're not going to protect it. We're not going to call read zones. We're not calling power read. You're going to have to be a pocket quarterback in this game, right? And let your athleticism play. If you're worried that a hit could hurt him further, don't play him.
Right.
A middle-of-the-road bowl game is not worth that. Exactly. What I do feel, however, is just because he's healthy for contact doesn't mean you expose him to as much contact as possible, meaning he's going to run the ball 15 times. I would say, let him scramble, and then, dude, when you get in space and you get as much yards you get, and then go down, slide.
Get down, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Not head first where someone can come hit you in your shoulder, slide. Because if somebody hits him in his shoulder when he slides, it's going to be a little different. He's going to be more give. That's just the reality of it. Where if you leap, hit someone, drives you in the shoulder, they're stopping your momentum and sending you down. That's where you could get some major punishment in that regard. So if he is going to play in the bowl game, I think you need to just let him sit back and throw the football. Somebody just said in the chat, let him run the Pine offense, which is kind of, I think that's kind of where you need to go. And honestly, that's where Tyler needs the work. We know he's a dynamic runner. Tyler needs the work of, can you sit back in the pocket and execute this defense and go about it that way? That's the unknown with Tyler, and mainly because of just inexperience. He just hasn't played enough. He got hurt in the middle of his second start, so I think that's going to be an interesting aspect to this and kind of ramps up Tyler's prep, because the other option too, Ryan, is they're going to start Steve. This is an option. I'm just throwing out scenarios. I'm not saying this is going to happen. They're going to start Steve Angeli. He's the quarterback. Tyler, you're on deck in case Steve gets hurt or Steve
emergency
falters,
quarterback. Yeah,
right?
right.
And and then if he can't play, then you go on and play, because you're now down to basically 2 serviceable quarterbacks at this point in time. With all due respect,
Mitchell Evans gets some reps, buddy.
with all due respect to Ron Paulus.
Yes.
I don't mean that in any disrespect, but you're going to have, but that's the other thing, is you're going to have to spend some time on the, okay, what happens if scenarios. And, is it Mitchell Evans at quarterback? Do you go with a wildcat with, Logan Diggs or Chris Tyree? Like, you got a lot of things you got to figure out here.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly puts you in a tough spot. But, props to the staff for being honest with Drew. Honestly, and you know what? I'll be real about this. I'm not a fan of this move by Drew Pine. I'm really not. I get what he's doing, but you can let the coaches know, hey, look, I understand where you're coming from. I'm going to transfer at the end of the year, but I still want to finish this thing. I
have mixed feelings about it. I don't like it. I have mixed feelings. It seems very impulsive to me, but it's just my opinion. Like, it's his decision ultimately, but I don't 100% agree with it. I would say, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting scenario. This bowl game prep just got a lot more interesting, Ryan. Got a lot more interesting. So this also kind of fits into the whole, okay, now do you go with the youth movement on offense, or do you do as much to protect the quarterback and just say, hey, we're going to go 12, 13 personnel. We're going to run the football. We're going to try to get out of this sucker. Personally, I would say I almost feel like at receiver, not having Pine almost forces you to say, we got to get Dion and Tobias ready to go. Because whoever the quarterback is needs as big of a catch radius as possible, right? And I'm serious. Like, as big of a catch radius as possible to kind of have him feel comfortable that, you give me my 6'5" Deion Colsey, give me my 6'4" Tobias, give me my 6'2.5" Jaden Thomas in the slot, or 6'2" Jaden Thomas in the slot, give me my 6'4" tight end and Holden Stacy, give me my 6'6" guy in Mitchell Evans, and just say, hey man, we're going to take some shots. We're going to throw the ball down the field. We're going to take some ISO one-on-one shots against and go make a play, and so in some ways, Ryan, the pressure's off at that point in time.
This just got fascinating, Brian. I thought this was just going to be, I'll be honest with you. I was kind of like just thinking, okay, cool. Drew Pine, one last game. We're going to see what the weapons are around him that are kind of like the young guys. Maybe we'll get a sprinkle of Steve Angeli. But without Drew Pine in the game, now my mind is going, do you give Tyler Buchner a heavy workload? Do you bring him along slowly? Do you completely split snaps? Man, it's interesting.
Yes.
I'm very,
and we don't have answers.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. If Buchner does play in this football game, I'm very hopeful that he has a nice performance, though, because he's been the whipping boy over the last couple of months. So.
Here's the thing, right? Neither of us are surprised at all that Drew Pine's transferring. I mean, we've been talking about that since before the season.
I expected it. Yeah.
It's just, I'm shocked that it's happening now. And before and honestly, if Tyler Buchner was still healthy and starting, I wouldn't be surprised or not disappointed. I'm disappointed Drew Pine's not staying, because I like Drew. I like him. I think he's got a great family. I wouldn't be opposed to him leaving now, because he's got to go do what's best for him. He's not the starter. It is all good. You get Steve Angeli ramped up to be the backup, but you were going to be a starter in the bowl game. You were going to be part of seeing this thing through, and I don't love the move. Now, again, that's me not loving the move based on what I know of the situation. I may find out more intel, more data later that says, look, he wasn't going to start in a bowl game, or he couldn't, if he didn't do it now, he couldn't do it, and if he stayed for the bowl game, it wouldn't allow him, because the bowl games, maybe later, it wouldn't allow him time to do all this and find another. There may be some circumstances that would make me come back and say, you know what, I understand. I don't like it, but I understand why he did it. So just people be clear on that. My gut reaction is I don't like it, but there may be some things we learn down the road that say, hey, he didn't really have a choice. He had to go now, or he couldn't go at all, or he was going to be out of opportunities and other type of things. So that's kind of just keep that in mind. So I reserve the right to kind of change my opinion a little bit when we find out a little bit more.
All I'll say is this, Brian, is you talked about it a little bit on boardsandirishbreakdown.com a couple of days ago, right? chaos is
Yeah.
coming, folks.
Yeah.
It is coming.
Well,
It started
we
earlier
told
than I
people it was
anticipated.
going to be a very interesting offseason. And Ryan, we knew this move was going to happen. It was just, again, the
Didn't think it was going
timing
to happen
of it is
now.
what. Yeah. What I really thought was going to happen is that Pine would stay for the spring battle. And then when he realizes he's not going to get the job, then leave. But I also understand the desire to, because I don't know when he's set to graduate. That's the unknown for me. Is he a graduate? Is he a December graduate? Will he graduate in May? Is he going to, because like, here's the thing, like, who was it a couple years ago? It was, well, Houston Griffith was going to do this, but we saw several guys last year that did this, where they actually stayed at Notre Dame. Lawrence Keys. He stayed at Notre Dame through the entire spring to graduate, even though he had been off the team since the fall. And it set up a situation where, okay, he is on the team, or he's on campus, but he's not part of the team. We've seen this before. So I don't know when Drew graduates, because there's no way Drew is not going to get his degree. There's no way that's going to happen. So does he leave now and try to finish remotely? I mean, there's so many unknowns to this that we just don't have knowledge of. But that's kind of part of why I thought he was at least going to stay in the spring and compete. Like, dude, you're going to have a leg up on whoever you're competing against. But he just must have assumed that there was no way he was going to be able to win the job, or he didn't think that they were going to give him really a chance to win the job. But I was told flat out multiple times that Drew was absolutely going to get a chance to compete for the starting job. Now, did the people that I talked to think that he was going to win it? Probably not. But that was just because there's other guys that are better. But if he would have been the best man for the job, then they'd have played him. But yeah, it's an interesting move. The timing is the only thing that threw me off, to be honest with you.
I mean, and we've been kind of talking about this a little bit, Brian, right? I mean, I feel like our tone over the last couple of weeks has been very like, if Drew comes back type of thing. And I think if you read between the lines,
we try to drop as many hints to y'all as possible without actually saying things.
Exactly.
So that way we have plausible deniability, saying, I never said that. I don't know what you're talking about. I never said that. But some people get it, some don't. So anyway, so the quarterback thing is here's the thing. So let's tie this into the bigger picture of this. I almost feel like this forces your hand, or not forces your hand, but makes your decision for you about which direction you go, back to the original premise of the conversation, which is, do you go young? Do you go youth movement? Do you start looking to 2023 and use this? Yes, we're going to try to win a game, but we're going to try to win it with the guys that we think can, or do you, I think it kind of does that. I think you could also make a counter argument that, look, you need to surround the starting quarterback with as many veterans and proven guys as possible. There's that. But for me, my gut reaction is this almost kind of says, okay, it's time to just go, make that move and start getting ready for next year. Play Tobias, play Billy Shrouth, play Ty Chan or Rocco Spindler or whoever else, play those guys. That's my gut reaction, Ryan. Yours the same, or do you kind of go the other direction of, dude, you need to make sure Lug and these old veterans players are protecting whoever the quarterback is going to be, because otherwise you're putting them in even a bigger situation.
Even before this situation happened, I was much more on the youth movement side of things. And it's mostly because I think, for me, I think that there's some youth that has maybe not been utilized as much as it could have been this year. And I think that there might not be and again, I'm not like a coach, right? Like, I'm not there every single day evaluating them practice to practice to performance. But I do think that there are some players that maybe should have been given a little more opportunity this year than what they were presented with. And I don't know if the drop off from the incumbent veteran starter is that downward to the second string or the next option for the younger guys, right? So I think that for me, Brian, I would like to honor the veterans to a degree and give them an opportunity, but I am much more to the youth movement aspect of it, especially without Drew now, especially. Like, you're going to be either Tyler's going to be able to play, or you're going to have, Steve Angeli, a true freshman, playing a ton. So I think you steer into the youth movement at this point. Right? We're expecting there to be some turnover this offseason, a decent amount of turnover for Notre Dame. So if there's going to be a decent amount of turnover, let's at least evaluate some of the young guys that could be back next year, right? The guys that could potentially be difference maker on next year's team. So I think this is a big evaluation opportunity for Notre Dame, the coaching staff.
Agree. And I also think that it's not necessarily an end-all be-all. I do think you can kind of pick and choose some positions where maybe you don't go there. Like you could say, hey, we're going to go young on the perimeter, but we're going to make sure Josh Lugg is in there to provide some leadership and make sure that the whoever the quarterback is doesn't get killed. Because there's a bunch of young guys who haven't played together before, and there's a lot of miscommunications. So you can kind of maybe pick and choose a little bit where those movements are going to be. But I agree. Yeah. I think by and large, I'm going 12 personnel looks. I'm going to go with my 11 personnel looks, and I'm going to get Tobias and Dion out there together. I'm going to play Jaden Thomas in the slot, see how he handles that, which is where he's been the best this year. Mm-hmm. Lorenzo, we'll see, where he's at with everything. And there's just so many different aspects to this. And I'm wondering, does there come a point in time, Ryan, this is kind of off topic, does there come a point in time where they're going to be forced to get rid of the bowls because teams are going to have enough kids to field a roster with the insanity of where this is going?
Well, that's one thing. Also, Brian, I would say that maybe the product would be unwatchable at a certain point if that stuff does trend that way, but it's football and people are always going to watch it, right? So it's tough, man.
Well, it's not about watching it. It's just about, do you have enough guys to field a team to go out there and play? That's really where it's coming from, because you're going to have guys sitting out because they're going to the NFL. You're going to have guys sitting out because of the portal. Right. Like, you're going to have to either move the bowl games up to make them happen earlier. Then you can move the portal to later December, which then allows those kids still time to, a window to still figure out where they're going to go. They're going to have to rethink this whole thing. Or here's a thought: get rid of the way the portal is now, the insanity of the portal, and get rid of the whole one-time exception thing, because you're going to have a lot fewer kids jumping into portal if there wasn't the ability to just automatically go in there and leave and play right away. You'd see Drew Pine's going to say, okay, I'm staying until May to get my degree, and then I'll transfer. You'd see a lot of these things change. And, I've said before, I didn't like the way the transfer process worked before, Ryan, but they've made it worse. They took a bad system and made it worse. Yep. And it just and we're seeing this now. We're seeing it now.
Could you imagine if Texas A&M ended up 6-6 and bowl eligible right now with all the turnover they're going to have from a roster perspective? Like, they were one team that probably couldn't field a team, to your point. So, oh man, this is wild. It's wild, man.
Yep.
And folks, it's only going to get wilder.
Yes. Now I think this is we'll just leave it there. So anyway, I don't know what happened to you. That wasn't me. We didn't get a chance to really dive into the defense specifically, Ryan, and what would a youth movement look like there? I think that's an interesting one. And honestly, what I would like to see Notre Dame do is this is where it'll be kind of, you look, give me Clarence Lewis as my field corner and spend all 15 practices getting Jaden Mickey working the slot. That's what I would do. Because I think that's where he'll be in 2023. That's where I think his spot to play a ton, filling in for Tariq Bracy. And then I'd kind of look at it like, whatever, Brandon Joseph, whatever your decision is, make it now and move on. And so I'd like to see that as something too. So it's Ramon Henderson, it's Xavier Watts, it's and now the two veterans that I'm playing in this bowl game, if they want to play, is DJ Brown and Houston Griffiths, because those guys have been such great loyal soldiers to this team. So again, it's not an across the board, but I'm going to play Ramon and Xavier a ton. You guys are going to play. I'd even start Xavier. I'd even start Houston and DJ just as a reward, but just know that these kids are getting in there early and often. Yep. That would be kind of part of it for me. Linebacker Jalen Sneed's playing in this game for me.
Has to, man.
No question. Junior Tuihalamaka's playing in this game for me. And I would even strongly consider getting Nolan Ziegler some reps as well, linebacker. He's definitely starting on special teams for me, Nolan Ziegler. The other interesting one is Josh Burnham. I'd be curious because I believe he's going to be able to practice and play in the bowl game, but as long as he's good to go, he's another guy that I'm playing, because you're probably not going to have Isaiah Foskey. He's going to make that do you go the youth movement decision for you. Then you get down to, okay, is Justin Adamiola going to play in the bowl game? If he's going to play in the bowl game, then I would play him for sure, because I still want to entice him to come back next year. If you don't play Justin in the bowl game because you're doing this youth thing, you're pretty much telling him you don't want him back next year. And my understanding is that Notre Dame does want him back next year. And so, to me, I think that it's just a scenario where that's something you have to think about too, right?
Yeah.
And there may be some guys maybe you do kind of hope enter the portal, so you don't play them, because then you're just kind of letting them know, like, hey, look, here's the deal, man. Like, this kid's going to we're going to give this kid a chance to see what he can do. And then when we get out in the spring, there's going to be a battle. So I think those are different aspects for me. But up front, I mean, you don't have as many options up front. If Aiden Gobire's healthy, I'd give him some snaps. If Tyson Ford's healthy, I'd give him some snaps. Jason Onye is definitely a guy that I would try to get some snaps in this bowl game. But the thing there is, most of those guys are coming back. I don't think Jason Adamiola is going to play in this game. I think we'll kind of not get too much into that, but I don't think he'll play in this game. So I think that the D line is going to kind of take care of itself of guys not playing, like choosing not to play in the game or can't play in the game because of injuries or whatever other things that are going on. So that'll be the thing that you look at.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that the interior defensive line, I didn't even think about that, Brian. I mean, outside of if Jason Adamiola doesn't play, I mean, you're talking about who's the only other senior would be Chris Smith, right? If he chooses to play or they choose to play him type of thing. So you're playing the Gabriel Rubios of the world anyway. Howard Cross is going to be back next year, so obviously he can play if he's healthy, right? I mean, then you have the Jason Onyes of the world, Tyson Ford's maybe playing a little strong ends, mixing it inside at points. But I do think that it's interesting to watch the Viper. If there was one position that I am zeroed in on outside of just the what the heck is going to happen at quarterback conversation, it's Viper in this game. If Isaiah Foskey does not play, you get a little sneak preview of what Joshua Burnham, Aiden Gobira, and a Jordan Patello combination could be next year. If that's kind of how everything shakes out. So I think that's a very interesting conversation. Second level for me, I mean, you mentioned it with Jalen Sneed, but if these young linebackers of Junior Tuihalamaka, Jalen Sneed, Nolan Ziegler, and Prince Colley, if they don't play a ton in this football game, then it's malpractice.
Prince Colley should have been the first name out of my mouth. I just kind of already, in my head, I was assuming that one was going to be a guy that got a lot of reps.
Sure.
You are correct on that. Yes. I was more talking to where I just want to make sure people are clear. Like, do you think Prince Colley shouldn't play? Prince Colley's the first name out of my mouth. Then it's the freshman, because that would have been assumed Prince is part of the rotation already.
Yes.
I would ramp up his reps a little bit. I was more referring to the guys we haven't seen as much this year,
right.
Jalen Sneed and those other guys.
Yep,
for sure.
Yeah, I expect to see that second level. I think you definitely need the injection of youth in this football game, right? Like, I mean, could Marist and JD and Jack be back next year? Like, yeah, they could, but I still want to see. We've talked a lot about linebacker recruiting over the last year and into this recruiting process now in 2023. And I want to be honest with you. I want to see what Junior can do. I want to see what Jalen can do. Joshua Burnham now at defensive end. I want to see what Nolan Ziegler can do. I want to see these guys move around a little bit and see what the future holds. So I think that youth movement is Brian, how about this? I didn't even think about this until right now, but I think there's some conversation maybe about a youth movement on defense is more appropriate than offense if you're not comfortable with the quarterback position, right? And that's something to think about. Something to think about.
Yep. Ryan, well, you know what? Explain that. I think that's interesting, Ryan. Explain what you mean.
Yeah. I think for me, if you are now playing with a quarterback that is returning from injury or a freshman that has barely played a quarterback, right? I think that there is some substantial I think that there's some legitimacy to saying, hey, let's play the Josh Luggs. Let's play the older guys up front. Maybe play more Mitchell Evans than, Holden Stace or Kane Barong, because we want to make sure that our front can hold up a little bit better, right? That we can kind of protect the quarterback position. But on defense, I would say that you're not protecting anything, right? I mean, you already have Cam Hart that isn't going to play in this football game. And you already have Isaiah Foskey who might not play in this game. You already have Jason Adamiola who might not play in this game. So let's steer into it, right? Let's steer into the youth movement defensively. I want to see the Joshua Burnhams play. I want to see the Tyson Fords play. I want to see Prince on the second level. I want to see Jalen Sneed on the second level. I want to see those guys. I want to see Jane Mickey get a ton of work inside and outs. Like, I want to see it, right? And Benjamin Morrison, just keep doing what you're doing, buddy. So I think defensively, you're not protecting anyone, right? You're saying let's steer into the skid a little bit. Let's go with the youth. But offensively, there might be some legitimacy to saying maybe we shouldn't do a full youth movement on that side of the ball.
Interesting. There's a couple things. Because we are going to do the preview of the games today, but there's a couple things that I want to address here about that, something that were brought up about this. And my guy Mark brought this up, and thanks for the super chat, Mark. And Mark said the transfer portal is more exciting than NFL free agency. I would imagine it would be good for your business as well. People always checking in. It is good for my business, but for the short term. But what's bad for my business is that college football loses fans the way that I think it will if this continues. Right, Ryan? Like, okay, yeah, it's good for the next year or two. But eventually it's going to hurt the game and ruin the game. And all of a sudden, we're going to lose business, right? I mean, you've seen this happen. This happens in sports all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You make big decisions. You don't think them through about the long-term consequences. When Major League Baseball made the stupid decision to cancel the World Series in 1994, they thought, we're America's pastime. We're the most popular sport in America. People are going to come back. They have never come back to the degree, even with the home run stuff in 1998. They've never come back to baseball the way that they used to be. They've never been able – they got past – football has lapped baseball at this point in time. And we've seen the NBA go through these periods where decisions that they make or guys that leave and all of a sudden fans leave and they don't always come back, right? And so this thought that you can just do whatever and people are going to come back is not true. And even then, besides the business part, I care more about the game. This is not good for the game. Yes, it's good for entertainment and clicks and all that other kind of stuff, but it's not good for the game. It's not good for young people. The lessons we're teaching young people in football, the way coaches conduct themselves and the way they move around is already setting enough bad lessons for young people. But now we're saying, hey, there's no accountability for you in the decisions you make. There's no, hey, you don't like this, go. You want to commitment? Who cares about commitment, right? Oh, well, coaches leave. Most don't. The percentage of coaches that change over by their own choice is, I would imagine, less than the number of players that are going to jump in the portal. I mean, it's insane how many kids are jumping in the portal right now. So Mark, you are correct that it's exciting, I guess, and it's entertaining for sure, and it is good for business. But the best thing for my business long term, and every decision I've made since I started Irish Breakdown, Ryan will tell you this, is with long term in mind. And long term, I'm afraid where this is going, and the damage this could do to. And I could probably say we've probably lost at least 10 customers that have reached out to me to let me know, hey, I love you guys, but I just can't, what's going on right now, I can't support. I've lost my love because of this and this. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I can't blame you. So it's good for business in some ways, but long-term, it's not going to be good for business because they're going to lose a lot of support if they don't rein this in some way, somehow. I'm not saying go back to the old system. I'm not anti-NIL. I'm pro-NIL, very pro-NIL. I'm anti the way it's being used and implemented right now. I'm very pro players having more freedom of movement. But there was not a single kid before this thing happened that couldn't transfer whenever he wanted or wherever he wanted because they had finally gotten rid of that stupid rule about conferences. And then immediately after that, they just opened the whole thing up stupidly, in my opinion. So, yes, changes were needed. But these aren't good changes. And, the Drew Pine situation is a perfect example of, hey, this is going to go to the portal. And, thanks for 8-2, but we're going to go to the portal. If you're looking at it from Drew's standpoint, we're going to go to the portal and find your replacement. How's that good for Drew Pine? Yeah. Right? So, how's it good for the kids, at USC that had gone through all the struggles and the losses and battled their butts off to be part of a rotation only to see it get replaced by some dude that they went and basically bought in the portal? How's that good for the kids at USC? And so you could say it's good for business, but I just don't think it's good for the game. And at the end of the day, what's good for the game is still the best thing for me. And so that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, Well, Brian, I would say this. I think that we're both cut from the same cloth in that we wanted to cover football for a living. You know, like some people I think just want to cover sports for a living, but we wanted to cover football for a living because we love the game. You know, like, I mean, at the essence of it, I'm here where I am because I loved the sport for my entire life, right? And that I fully just dove into the intricacies of it and what, you know, the history of it and what makes the game great and what makes the game different and how the game's trending and all those types of things. And the integrity of the game getting ruined, to your point, right? Like, it might give you some clicks as far as like I'm sure we're going to get a ton of clicks off of this Drew Pine transfers thing, right? Like, it's going to happen, but does that make
it's already blowing up?
Does it make it to the sense of like, we wanted to cover the game because we want to celebrate football, right? We want to celebrate how important it's been to us, how much we love the game. And this does it. There are things that are tarnishing the game of football, right? Because I am also very NIL pro, right? Like, I love the fact that players, because I was a player, like, I love the fact that they get to make a living off their name, image, likeness, make a profit, make some benefit to them, right? But a lot of the NIL stuff that people keep pointing to is not actually NIL. It's tampering. It's improper benefits. It's not NIL by its core, right? So
you're not making money off your name, image, and likeness. You're being paid to come here and play. You're not doing commercials. You may do like make 2 social media posts a month and blah blah, and it's not equaling what they're paying these people. And so yes, it's not. I mean, when high school quarterbacks are getting paid more than current quarterbacks, that's not name, image, like this. That's, you're buying players in a way that I don't think benefits them long term. It doesn't benefit you as a program. There's just a lot of and it, you know, it doesn't create parity, right? And that's what they say the goal is. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Yep. And you know, we'll have more transfer portal conversations, because I did not like the old system. I did not like how, if you were a SEC coach, you could say, hey, you can't transfer to a team in our league. Or the Big Ten used to have a rule way back in the day. I don't know when they got rid of it, but you had to sit out 2 years if you transferred within the Big Ten. That's dumb. And I don't like the fact that it was, if you transfer, you lose a year. I've always been a proponent, if you transfer and you stay in good academic standing, you get that year back. Because what happens is you lose the ability, if you've never redshirted and transferred under the old system, you'd lose your red shirt, because that was your red shirt. But if you redshirted as a freshman, then transferred, you lost a year. That's not good. Give the kids the year back. The reason that people say, well, you shouldn't punish kids who want to transfer. Well, first of all, you signed an agreement, right? A scholarship is a 4-year agreement. Now, some conferences don't want to have 4-year contracts. I think the SEC, well, that's fine. Then for schools that only want to have 1-year contracts, that's fine. Then those kids can transfer any chance there's no sitting out. If you don't want to guarantee a kid's 4-year contract, 4-year scholarship, you know, as long as he doesn't break rules and is a good academic standing, then that kid can leave, right? Let him, hey, look, my contract was for this season and I'm honoring my contract. I'm leaving. You know, but most conferences now, Power 5 conferences now, the SEC is the only one I'm unsure of. But I know the Big Ten now is 4-year scholarships. I know that the ACC for sure, and I think the Big 12 is. I don't know about the Pac-12 and the SEC. I'm not saying they aren't. I don't know. But SEC was one that fought that, Ryan. You've signed a 4-year contract, right? You signed a deal. You can't just up and leave. That doesn't happen in the real world when you've signed a contract. There are consequences in real world. It's financial usually, right? Or you have like there's people that have signed non-competes in our market, and if you go to another Notre Dame site, okay, cool, but you can't talk about Notre Dame for a year. You know, we've seen that before, where a guy goes and works somewhere else, and for a year he couldn't talk about Notre Dame. Or it was happened to a buddy of mine that covers Michigan. He left one site to another, and he couldn't talk about recruiting for a year. Well, that's what he did. You know what I mean? So there's consequences to that. Well, you can't punish a kid financially for transferring. So it's about that. But the sitting out for me is not about punishment. It's a roadblock to say, slow down. Make sure that you're really making the right decision, because you can't get this thing back, man. You know what I mean? So let's pump the brakes a little bit. Make sure that this is the reason that you want to transfer. When there's the sit out a year, it puts more thought into, is this really what you want to do? And if a kid decides he wants to do that, then sure, he can leave. And if he stays in good academic standing, he'll get that year back of eligibility back. Right now, I also believe that there are protections that need to be put into your NIL. If a school promises you something, they should have to put that in writing in your NIL or NLI. That's a national letter of intent. And hey, you're going to start as a freshman. All right, cool. Put that in your NLI. Yep. Right? You're going to get the jersey number 3. Cool. Put it in writing. We'll promise you 12 starts a year. Put it in writing. Hey, we're going to pay you $50,000 a year for this. Okay, cool. Put it in writing. Right? And if you break your contract, if you break the agreement as a coaching staff, then I can leave without consequences. When a coach leaves, you know what I mean? Then they should we've talked about it, they should have a window to be able to leave. And so I believe that there need to be protections for players. I just don't think what we're doing right now is protecting players. We're hurting players, in my opinion, in many different ways. Kids going out and kids coming in, kids that are staying, kids are trying to do it the right way. You know, so somebody said this, Mark Stewart also said college football is a multi-billion-dollar business, can't make the kids solely responsible for the ideas of amateurism. Where did we ever say that? Where did we ever say that? We have said many times, who's to blame for all this? When have we ever said the kids are to blame? Where today did we say the kids are to blame? We've never said that, Mark.
Yeah.
I've never said the kids are responsible for any of this. What we've said is, I don't blame the kids because they're taking advantage of the system that is in place.
You're making it easy for them, right? Like, right. I mean, you're enacting the rules that they're taking advantage of and that they're profiting off of. There's nothing wrong with it. And I've already said that Brian has been very forthcoming that he's fine with the ability to transfer because he literally transferred. I know we're
after
both
my freshman year. Yes.
I know we're both okay with kids making money off of their name, image, and likeness.
Yes.
We've talked about that a ton. This isn't about the kids. This is about the old men in the room that decide to just kind of make a rule and to just hide behind the curtains.
And they're not helping the kids.
Yeah.
Oh, they're getting money in their pocket. But what are you teaching them? We can do both, right? We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can say these kids flat out need to be able to take advantage of their name, image, and likeness. And I've gone so far as that to say, like, if you sell a kid's jersey, he should get a cut of that. Now you can say, hey, look, it's either salary or we're going to put it into an account that's going to let it collect interest for 4 years. And when you graduate, we'll give you that money, right? I mean, there's all types of different things that I'm a big believer in that we need to do more to protect these kids. I've said it a million times. Nowhere have I said the kids are responsible for this. Nowhere have I said these kids should not be entering the portal because they should fight back against the system. I'm not saying that. I flat out said who is to blame for this 1,000 times. So I don't know what, Mark, you're referring to here. I really don't. And you don't have to do another super chat to respond. You can just respond. But I've never said the kids are responsible for amateurism. And I think the old view of amateurism was stupid. That wasn't amateurism. That was, we don't want to have to pay you. We want to keep all the money. It wasn't about amateurism. That was silly. You know, because like I think the Olympics finally found the right method of amateurism. You're not going to be paid to pay. You're not going to be paid to play the sport. You cannot be a professional in a lot of the Olympic sports, in my opinion, to do those things. But if you're a popular person, you can do advertising. You can do this. You can sell this. You can do that and make money off of your brand. That's absolutely what should be happening. If you're going to have a kids, you know, if you're Notre Dame and you're going to promote your starting tight end for this ticket campaign you're doing, that kid you should pay him like you would if you were going to have an actor do it, right? All those things need to be part of it, right? And kids should be allowed, hey, you're a famous quarterback at Notre Dame. We'd love to have you do a local spot and pay you $10,000 to come do a local radio bit 1 day of work. And we're going to run that spot for the next 2-3 months. Cool. Do it. Let's do it. I'm all for that. It's just the way they're doing it is not good for these kids. And there's so little education happening for these kids on make sure you're declaring this, make sure you're paying your taxes, and we're not protecting these kids. And you've mentioned this to me, Ryan, that the agents that are signing these kids are taking more from them than what is going to NFL guys, because these 18-year-olds don't know the system. Their parents don't know what's going on. There's not as much education out there for them as there is going into the NFL draft. So these kids are signing with agents who are taking way more of a percentage of the cut than what you're seeing from NFL kids. How is that good for these kids? How
Brian,
is any of that good for these kids?
I'll put in.
Let me say something. What happens when a kid goes to jail in 3 years because he owes $150,000 in back taxes that he never knew he had to pay?
Right.
That's good for these kids? That's good for the kids? It's not. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh no, I was just going to say, to add just to your point. I've heard, so for people that don't follow it too much, when a NFL draft prospect hires an agent, they usually cost 3% of what their earnings are, right? So 3%. There is an NIL agent that has flat out told me that he told a kid that he wanted 30% from them. So the difference between 3 and 30, I mean, guys, like, we don't have to be math majors to understand that's 10 times the multiple, right? Like, that's insane.
And there's a system in place for educating people going into the draft and hiring an agent.
Yes, there is. Yep.
And they've basically barred schools from being involved in NIL, which means they have to be very careful about how much they can do with kids to protect them. How is that good for kids? Now, and nowhere in this conversation did we say they shouldn't be getting money. That's wrong. I'm a believer in amateurism. I am a believer in amateurism, but not what they used. That wasn't amateurism. That was theft, in my opinion. I truly believe that. I think that there's value to a scholarship. There is value to a scholarship, but value to a scholarship does not mean that these kids should not be able to have a YouTube channel that makes them money, which is what they hammered that kicker from like UCF or wherever. That was stupid.
So stupid.
AJ Green gets suspended because he made money selling his freaking jersey. That's stupid. That's not amateurism. That's, we don't want to open up this can of worms because then we have to split some of our pie, and we don't want to do that.
Who was the one? Was it Reggie Bush, the one that was paying memorabilia to get tattoos or something? Was that him? Yeah. I can't remember who that was.
Like, what now?
No, was it Maurice Claret? I'm trying to remember who it was.
He was involved in some of that stuff, but then it was the tattoo thing was Terrell Pryor,
that was Terrell Pryor,
Devere Posey, and Mike Adams.
That's who it was. Got it. Yep.
Yes. All right. So that's kind of my rant. Mark, I appreciate you, man. You're a great member of this community, but I never said that. I never said that the kids are responsible for amateurism. I don't know where that came from, so I really don't know how to respond specifically, but I have never said that. And I think it's to me, it's misguided when people think that reforming what's happening now is somehow about the kids. I'm about protecting these kids 1,000%. I'm about reforming how coaches can move. Look, I was a former coach as well, Ryan. I should be allowed to take a job that betters my career. I should. But there also have to be some consequences if I don't do it a certain way.
Right.
In the NFL, you cannot leave a team in the middle of the year to go work for another team. You can't leave a team and then go, there's rules to it. If a player is signed, I mean, didn't the Patriots, who was it that just lost a bunch of draft picks for tampering?
It was the Patriots, I think, lost one, and then yes, it was the Patriots. Yep.
Like, didn't they lose a first-round draft pick this year?
No, that was the Dolphins lost their first round pick.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and it was for tampering with the Tom Brady thing. That's what it was about. Is they lost the pick for the Tom Brady thing, not whatever people accuse him of with Brian Flores. They didn't get hammered for that. They got hammered for their tampering with Tom Brady, trying to get Tom Brady to come to Miami. And so there's harsh penalties. A first-round draft pick is a harsh penalty for tampering. There's no tampering rules right now.
Yep.
Now, what we have said is I'm not a person who's a believer in saying, well, this kid should get suspended and not be eligible if someone else tampers with him. That's punishing the kids for what the adults should be doing. I'm fining you $5 million as an institution, and that coach cannot coach next season. That's who should be sitting out, right? And if your institution, well, we didn't talk to this kid. It was some booster who did this. It was somebody who did that. Okay, fine. You're responsible for that. Get your boosters under control.
Mm-hmm.
Get your people under control. Educate your fan base that if you do this, this is the consequences. We can't play in a bowl game. We can't play in a conference championship game. We lose the ability to have a transfer come here for 3 years, because it's like that in baseball. If you break rules on the international free agent market, you lose the ability to sign an international free agent for a period of time, right? And so why are we not doing that with the transfer portal? If you get caught tampering, you get fined big dollars. You lose the ability to play in a postseason game, which includes conference championships, and you lose access to the transfer portal for 3 years. Make it a harsh punishment. Then you can change the process around to make sure that kids are not being put in these situations where they're getting pursued for an entire season by people looking to get them to jump into the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I would like to see it. But there's no stomach for that. There's no stomach for that.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and again, I'm not for punishing kids to transfer. Somebody said, how about having the kids to transfer pay the schools that the kids leave the amount of scholarship? No, that's punishing kids for transferring. I don't want to punish kids for transferring. I do not view sitting out a year as punishment.
Mm-mm.
I think in the old system, it was punishment because you lose a year.
Right.
I've always said, make them sit out a year, but give them the year back if they stay in good academic standing. That's not punishment for me. It's a roadblock to make sure that we're putting these kids in a situation where they have to really be thoughtful about transferring, to really make sure you're making the right decision. You'll talk to hundreds of Notre Dame players say, man, I was going to transfer after my freshman year. And if there was a portal like they are today, a lot of them would have. And they would regret the heck out of it. And that's what I'm saying.
Well, and Brian, there will be a couple kids that are going to be entering the portal in the future, not Notre Dame related, that we will talk a lot about the transfer portal at that point, because there's going to be a lot of transfer portal implications. There's going to be a lot of NIL implications. And It's just kind of it's just a symbol of how backwards some of the stuff is right now, which is,
Yep. So people saying that Tyler Buckner's going to play in the bowl game, I think are jumping the gun a little bit on that. So
he's practicing with the team.
He's practicing, but there's still some hurdles he's got to get through. But Marcus Freeman said 2 weeks ago that they're hopeful that he's going to play in the bowl game. Right. Because here's the deal. He still isn't cleared for, my understanding is like, he's not going to be out there going through tackling tomorrow. That's another hurdle he has to clear and get through physically. So as we talked about earlier, and as we wrote about in our article, that there is an anticipation that he's going to be ready to play in the bowl game. So I would just wish people would actually check our website and listen to the show first before they start asking about what some other person reported, especially since we've already reported it. So anyway, so that's kind of some thoughts there, Ryan. I'm kind of feeling like we want to do the preview of the games, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's some super chats that maybe we should, or some mailbag stuff that we should get through first, Ryan.
Let's do it.
So let's just get to a few of these things, these mailbag things, and then we will move on to the previews of the game. So again, folks, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. Also today at 4:30, Vince, Sean, and Jesse, Sean Stiers and Jesse Stiers, are going to have a sort of a special edition rapid fire at 4:30 on the Irish Breakdown channel. Obviously, Drew Pine is going to be a part of that conversation, so they'll talk about that obviously as well. Somebody just said I'm tired of Buckner. Huh? Somebody said you're tired of the two starts that Tyler Buckner made in his career. That's what you're tired of those two starts. Anyway, so do all that for us. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. And of course, we will have a show on Sunday where we will talk about Notre Dame's bowl destination on the Irish Breakdown podcast. So, Ryan, I want to kind of do the mailbag first here, and then we'll dive into the game previews. And so we have a couple super chats down here. Jacob Hayden says, was the jacket that Vince had on full zip or quarter zip? So Vince had in a quarter zip jacket yesterday, Jacob. I have not put that into the store yet because it's really expensive, and I've tried to kind of avoid really expensive items. But I may end up doing that. So
I may
we'll
need
see.
to buy a quarter zip as well. So.
You won't buy, man. You don't act like that. People gonna see this. People gonna take this like, oh, Ryan's got to buy his own. You have not paid a dime for any Irish Breakdown
I
merchandise.
have not paid a dime for any merchandise, Brian. I was
Nor
not
would
trying
you
to paint
ever.
that picture. Wasn't trying to paint that picture, man. I'm just saying I need a quarter zip, man. If
You're gonna say, Brian, I'm gonna need you to buy me a quarter zip.
I'm just saying, man. If it's on special order, I could pay for it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, right. We have a super chat from Zach Martin. Zach says, fun mailbag question. Ryan, if this was the NFL, how would you rate a trade with Western Michigan, Braden Fisk for Drew Pine?
I don't know why that made me laugh. That's really funny, Zach.
That is a good one.
I think that is a good trade for Notre Dame. I think that's a good trade for Notre Dame. Yeah. I mean, it
would be a three-way trade. You'd have to say like a trade where it's a three-way trade. Notre Dame gets Braden Fisk and let's just say for argument's sake Hudson Card in a different trade, and Hudson Card is the player to be named later for Ovia Gofu 2 years ago. That's what that is.
You know what I was going to say though is that Zach, in the NFL there's the trade market, but there's also the free agent market, right? So in this situation, it's a home run if you get Braden Fisk for Drew Pine, but then you also follow that up with a Hudson Card or another talented quarterback in the portal, which we're saying is free agency in this conversation, right? So
Hudson
doesn't
Card,
matter what you do.
Tyler Van Dyke, that one's could still be an option, even though he reported what he said. There's going to be some other guys in the portal that are going to jump in, but yes, if you're able to get one of those guys that we talked about yesterday, I mean that's a win. You're getting 2 for 1 at that point in time as well. So, and I don't want this to turn into a Hammer and Drew Pine thing. I like Drew. I think he's a great kid. I love his family. I just don't agree with this decision based on what I know now. But we've always said Notre Dame needs to upgrade a quarterback. It's just plain and simple. They need to upgrade a quarterback. That's it. Next super chat here is from David Hess. David says, Drew did the best he could during his career at Notre Dame. Good luck to him and let Angeli get some reps. Ryan, I get what David's saying here. I don't agree with that. I don't think this was the best Drew Pine can be. I think Drew Pine can be a better quarterback than he showed. And we started to see that at times. I just, because I don't think his issues this year were physical limitations. Some of the throws he made against USC, Ryan, were really tough throws that he wouldn't even try earlier in the season. And he didn't try on the final drive of the game. Like, I just feel like it's the same thing with Ian Book. Well, Ian Book did the best he could. Did he really physically? No, he didn't. Mentally, I think he did. But, and maybe that's the thing with Drew Pine, but I think there's this notion that, Drew Pine just physically can't. Drew Pine's arm is not something that keeps him from being a productive quarterback. His arm is not any weaker than Danny Warfel's. I would argue it's stronger than Danny Warfel's. That guy won a freaking Heisman.
That's a good point.
And it's not any weaker than Ty Detmers, right? So it's more about experience. I think as he gets more experience, he'll get better. So I don't, but I do wish him luck. And I do think in the end, this is be good for Notre Dame. It's just one less guy you've got to try to find reps for in the spring. That's good for all involved. But I do think he's capable of being better. Maybe not at a place like I think he'll even be better if he goes somewhere, a UMass, a UConn, a place like that. I think he'll be better. But I think Drew Pine is capable of being even better than we thought. There's this notion of like a kid making his second start, this is as good as he's ever going to be, like Tyler Buckner. A kid that's only made 10 starts, this is all he's going to be. Based on what? I still don't understand. I'm a little frustrated today with some of the comments, so I'm taking it out on people. David's a great poster, so I'm not even saying anything about David. It's not even about his comment. David's just trying to be kind to Drew, and I love that. But just for me, I just think Drew's going to get better. Wherever he goes, he's going to get better than what he showed this year. And because the flashes of North Carolina, at times against USC, Drew's capable of being that guy on a more regular basis. BYU. It's just about, having enough confidence in himself to do that. And I think at a smaller school, you'll see a more confident Drew Pine. I do believe that. I hope that's where he goes. I hope he doesn't try to go to a bigger school, like a Notre Dame comparable school. I hope that doesn't happen. Got a super chat from Joe Papiti. He says, so much for your comment of we have to win the bowl game. Brian, I totally disagree with your statement. Either he can play or he can't, not half. I don't understand the question.
I don't get it either.
Joe, I don't have the context of it. I think there was maybe a follow-up to that perhaps, but I don't know who you'd be referring to here. Is he talking about Drew Pine? Is he talking about Tyler Buckner? I guess I don't have enough context for what
was
he's
the
referring
time
to.
of that? 1:45.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what we were thinking of talking about.
I'm going to go back up there and see if Joe had a follow-up to that to kind of help me understand the context a little bit, because I don't want to. I mean, you're disagreeing with me, that's fine, but I don't want to push back against your disagreement if I don't know the context of what you're saying. So I apologize for not putting that in there the first time if there was a follow-up, but I'm getting close to it. So
someone just said in the chat that he was talking about Buckner.
Okay.
I guess Tyler playing in the bowl game. It's like
gotcha.
Not half
you can either
in.
play or you can't, not half. I mean, I think that's a little misguided, Joe. I think it's not, the kid hasn't played a game of football in 2 months. And you're just going to throw him in there and just say, go run the offense. A kid who's made 2 starts. It'd be different if he was a veteran who was a 2-year starter beforehand. But I don't think it's necessarily fair to him to say, okay, dude, go play. I don't know where you're coming from on that. But for me, I don't agree with that. I mean, and respectfully. So I just don't agree with that. Especially he's a sophomore. He doesn't have a fully developed body yet. He's going to get bigger and stronger. Maybe he'll handle that. But he's a young kid, so who's only started 2 games. I'm not throwing him to the wolves, and for a kid who doesn't play too much. You may have to now, but I kind of feel like I'd still want to see him get ready to play. So, and our thing is if you're talking about physically, somebody said I think he means physically. If he's not physically ready to play, he doesn't play at all. I never said that. What I'm saying is you don't expose him to a bunch of hits. A guy who's just been cleared physically is still going to be more prone to aggravating it with constant blows than a guy who's 6 months removed from the end of the rehabilitation process. If he's not physically cleared to play, he doesn't play. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. So. But Joe, I appreciate the fact that you did a super chat to disagree with me, because a lot of people don't like doing that. So I appreciate it.
I see in the chat, Brian, people saying that there's reports that Buckner is completely healthy and is going to start. No one has said that. So can we just stop putting false information?
Well, people are reporting that. People are reporting that, actually. Yeah. But I think it's a little bit misguided. Of what they're saying. And I don't know. I've seen a couple people have sent me stuff. The only reason I know that is somebody sent me some things that people have said, Ryan. Actually, there's one in your Twitter DM. But Tyler Buckner is cleared to practice. We've said that. Marcus Freeman said that. Marcus Freeman said he's been practicing for 2 weeks. People are like, Tyler Buckner's been practicing. That's not breaking news, everybody. The freaking head coach said that. Now, is he cleared to practice right now? Yes. But Tyler Buckner's not been cleared to play from the standpoint of, yes, they're practicing with the intention of him playing in the bowl game, but there's a lot he has to get through to be ready for that. And anyone that's coached football or been around the game understands the difference between someone who's cleared and someone who's going to play. There's a difference. There's a difference. Patrick Tolan with a super chat. Notre Dame football has more twists and turns than General Hospital, and I'm here for it. Yeah, I get it, man. It's nutty.
It is like a soap opera right now.
Yeah. John Klimek, first participation trophies for everyone, and now the transfer portal. Yeah, it's John, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Man, boy, oh boy. Charlie Weiss is last but Luke. Brian, I agree with your idea of the transfer. I also agree with slowing down and rethinking this, not only sports, but life decisions as well. Yeah, I mean, there has to be some sort of roadblock consequence that a kid has to deal with. Because again, consequences don't always mean punishment. That you have to deal with to say, hey, you need to really make sure you're making this decision for the right reasons and at the right time. And that's what the sit out thing is for me, Ryan.
Yep.
Let's see here. TJ Fallon, it's Brucey's time to shine and jelly. I don't understand.
Have you seen The Longest Yard?
Yes.
Where Brucey was the backup quarterback who said,
"Oh, is he the guy that was in NYPD Blue? What's his name?
He was
He
the
was
short
also in
Italian
NYPD.
guy.
He was also in Blue Bloods. He was Jamie Reagan's uh, trainer at the beginning of right. Is that who it's
I
saying?
believe so. I
Okay,
believe so. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I remember now.
He was the
Yeah,
guy that said he should have ate that popcorn before he
yeah,
fumbled the ball.
yeah.
That guy. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
got that now. Yeah. TJ Val on a super chat. Thank you, TJ. So I've watched every show this week from start to finish. I show up late. You guys have a bombshell of a topic. Sorry, won't happen again, boys. Go Irish. We want competition. Notre Dame and kids who want to compete.
Oh, it'll
Yeah,
happen again.
I
It'll
get
happen
that.
again, TJ. I'm
And then,
sure.
and then TJ followed up too with another super chat. TJ, appreciate you very much. He goes, hold out Buckner for his longevity. Start Angeli. Also have a Wildcat with Diggs, a quarterback, Audric at running back, and Tyree as the jet motion guy. I get that sentiment, Ryan, but if Tyler Buckner can play, I want him to play. I just think you have to be smart about how much you have him play. If he shows himself ready to play and start and be that, then that's fine. I'm okay with that. What I'm saying is you need to have him prove that first. And there's no freaking way he's proven he's ready to play after one practice. There's no way.
Yeah, I think that it's – look, I think there's a lot that's going to go into this conversation, a lot of this decision, right? Like Brian said, he reported a couple weeks ago that he was, back practicing with the team. But practicing with the team does not mean full go on contact, right? And we're still working towards an end goal here of a bowl game. And I would be disappointed if the staff rushed Drew back too quickly. I mean, rushed Tyler back too quickly and sacrificed the long term for the short term, right?
Yeah.
Like I would be very disappointed with that.
Yeah. So apparently Jacob Hayden definitely thinks that I should put the pullover in the. I actually got one too. Mine was navy. Vince likes white stuff. I'm too messy of an eater to wear too much white stuff.
Same. Never send me anything white, please.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to some other stuff here real quick. We have a question up here from Quinn Kibler on the mailbag. What do you think of the Auburn version of Jarrett Stidham for Hudson Card comp? I noticed in Card's film he puts the deep ball in good spots and had a lot of drops and PI calls. Thoughts on that, Ryan?
I think for me, Quinn, it's actually an interesting comp because I can see where it's coming from, right? I think body type perspective, Hudson Card throws a nice ball. He does. And one thing about Jarrett Stidham is I wasn't in on Jarrett Stidham from a mental processing perspective and a consistency perspective, but Jarrett Stidham threw a pretty ball, man. He really did. The ball came out of his hand really well. So talent perspective, I completely get that. I just hope if Hudson Card does end up at Notre Dame, I just hope that he's a little bit more I hope that he's able to take a few more risks than what Jarrett Stidham was. I felt like Jarrett Stidham was very reserved, but in a bad way a lot of times for me. And I feel like that was because he didn't see the game incredibly well. But from a talent perspective, I can kind of see that a little bit, Brian. I think that Hudson Card is a little more athletic than what Stidham was. But from a throwing perspective, Jarrett Stidham threw a pretty ball, man. Ball came out his hand clean. He did.
Yeah. Got some more questions here. We have one from Scott Yerbick. Mailbag question. Do you see Colsey being the fat third down receiver for a primary role? Need that first down type catch? I think the question basically is, do you see Deion Colsey becoming a more expanded player? And I think so.
I think so too. And I'm here for it, man. He's very talented.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question. Brandon Plesner, there's reports that Phil Dracovic is in the portal now. Does Brian want Phil back at Notre Dame? No, I love Phil Dracovic as a quarterback, but there's really three reasons why I would not do that. Number one, practically speaking, he doesn't fit with the offense that Tommy Rees wants to run.
At all.
Phil is a street ball kid. You got to let him you got to let him kind of go play. And that Tommy Rees wants more structure. That was the issue the first time around. Number two, he's had a lot of injuries the last couple years. He was injured most of last year. He was banged up all this year. It's not his fault. The kid takes a beating, but it's the same issue I have with Devin Leary, and Devin Leary is a more proven player than Phil Dracovic is. And number three, I understood Phil going off a little bit over the summer. I felt he needed to get that off of his chest, and I was okay with it. I supported it, but like his comments before the bowl game or before the BC Notre Dame game, it's kind of like I didn't have a negative reaction to it. Like I don't think he should have said it. I thought it was a little petty and immature, and some of it made zero sense. But like at that point in time, it's like, no, you can't make that marriage work. I'm sorry. As much as I think if he was healthy and they built around him, could he be a heck of a player? Yeah, everybody knows my feelings on Phil Jacoby. My feelings of him as a player have not changed. I just think right now all those factors, it would just make no sense for them to bring him back in or even make the phone call to see if he wanted to come back in. There's better fits out there that don't have the injury history. But I understand why Brandon's asking this because everybody knows how big of a proponent and a supporter of Phil Jacoby I've been. So no question about it. Thoughts on that, Ryan?
There's some wild takes in the chat is my only thought, Brian. There's some thoughts. But I think that it's there was a fractured marriage or fractured divorce with that,
Yeah.
right? Like there was a fractured separation, however you want to kind of quantify it. And I also do agree. Like Phil is a very talented kid, big arm, strong, athletic when he's healthy. But again, it's the same thing that we go back to with like a Devin Leary type of conversation, right? Do you want to, first and foremost, do you want to bring in a injury-prone quarterback into the fold when your reason that you're there is because of your injury-prone quarterback, right? Like that's the conversation it has. And then I also just don't think Phil's a good fit with Tommy in the offense. I don't think he fits what stylistically they want to do. And I just don't think the marriage makes any sense in that regard.
All right. It's funny, like things like I'm answering chats. I'm trying to do the show. I've got a million different sources texting me. So it's it gets a little hectic sometimes. All right. Irish Blooded Mailbag with Michael Mayer, most likely going pro. Michael Mayer's going pro. Yes. In the new wide receiver room this upcoming fall, do you think we will see more 12 and 13 groupings or less tight end and more traditional pro sets with 11 personnel? You know what I hope, Irish Blooded? I hope we see a balance of all of it. I think Notre Dame should always have 12 personnel and 13 personnel as a part of what it does. Mm-hmm. It's the one group, it's the one position at the skill positions that Notre Dame can recruit as well, if not better than anybody in the country. So not building your offense around that would be foolish to not do that. The issue this year to me was an overemphasis on it. But what I believe is that the coaches felt they had to do that because of limitations at other positions, which we kind of saw in 2020 as well because of Kevin Austin got hurt, Braden Lindsey got hurt. There were so many injuries at receiver. They were kind of forced to go 12 personnel. In the bowl game in 2019, we didn't see Tommy Rees overemphasize 12. We saw him use it, but didn't overemphasize it. 2021, we didn't see him overemphasize 12 personnel. You can say, well, maybe that's because of injuries as well. That's my point, though. We've never seen this team not have significant depth issues at one of those two positions. Next year, that should not be the case. I think, ideally, Tommy Rees would like to have a nice, healthy blend of all three. That's what I think he would like to do. So I think you'll see Irish Blooded still 12 and 13, but just not as heavy of his dose. Like the issue I had with Mike Denbrock, who I thought was a really good coach, is I thought Notre Dame was too 11 personnel focused, Ryan. Like I did a study, 14, I think it was 14 and 15. I think they were in 11 personnel over like 90% of the time. It was actually around 90% of the time. That was a little too much for me. And you saw the tight end usage in the pass game go way down during that stretch. That's not good. That's never should be the case at Notre Dame. Chip Long kind of brought that back up, and then Tommy Rees has taken that up even further. Mm-hmm. So I think it should be a big part of it. I just want to see more 21. I want to see 11. I want to see the potential to have 10 packages if depending on what you want to do. And so, I'm a big believer in multiplicity from a personnel formation, alignment, movement standpoint, and less scheme. That's what I'm a believer in. I think that can be hard for a defense.
I agree completely. I think from a defensive perspective as well, the more that an offense can do, the more you have to prepare for, the more adjustments you have to make, right? Like there is a lot of things that go into that conversation. I am glad that there's been a injection of more 12 and 13 personnel into the program, to your point, Brian, because I think, if there's positions that you can count on Notre Dame recruiting at a high level, it's always been offensive line and tight end, right? Like they always can do that, right? So getting a few different style of tight end, I think, could work really well together. I think you're seeing that on this roster, but I think to your point, you can't get too heavily reliant on one thing because I mean to have the change ups, to have the off speed stuff to your fastballs, like you need different things where defenses can't get too keyed in on what you're doing. And I think that was the downfall of this offense at times this year was that there was times where it was just too similar. Everything was just the same, right? We talked about the diversity in the
limiting
game. Exactly.
When you overemphasize one alignment, there's only so much you can do out of that. Especially 12 and 13 is even more limiting than others with the type of tight ends they had because they didn't use Kane Barong. If you'd have used Kane Barong a little bit more, maybe you could have done some different things. But Mitchell Evans and Michael Mayer cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways, and it just limited some of the stuff you could do, in my opinion. That's my thing about it, Ryan. Next question we got here from Brian Hockney said Braden Fisk from the defensive lineman from Western Michigan is at Notre Dame for an unofficial visit. Have you seen his film and what are your thoughts on him, Ryan? I watched a little bit of him last night. I liked what I saw. I know you've watched him a lot. Why don't you go ahead and give the people a little bit of a scouting report on Braden Fisk? Who, real quick, by the way, is from Michigan City in Indiana, which is not very far from here. And the
like
college he goes
minutes.
to at Western Michigan is like a little over an hour away from Notre Dame. So this is definitely a local kid.
Yep. Yeah. And I've talked to Braden actually a few times in the past. I actually had him for an interview early in the season because for people that don't follow me too regularly, I am big in the NFL draft side of things as well. And coming into the season, Braden Fisk actually had some draftable grades from the NFL. So the NFL is actually pretty high on him as well. So he is a very interesting player for Western Michigan over the last couple of years because he's an interesting body type. I mean, he's listed at 6'5", 300. I'm going to tell you he's more 6'4"-ish range and probably 290, 295, but he still has good size, obviously. And Western Michigan used him all over. Like there were reps where he's at 1, there's reps where he's at 3. If you watch the Michigan State game, they were down at defensive end, so they put him at edge during that football game. And he had
a couple big third down stop early
on a jet sweep, right?
Up. Yeah, exactly.
On a jet sweep, and that's impressive, man. We're talking about
he's got some feet now. I mean, it's not. I would not put him as a big end at Notre Dame. I'm not saying that, but like, dude, that's a Big Ten team, and he just shook that tackle and just went on and blew the jet up. I was like, okay,
yeah.
All right.
Now, and it's impressive when you consider he's 290 plus pounds, playing in space a little bit out of necessity, right? So he's a kid that's been asked to do basically everything on that Western Michigan defense, has played every single alignment. He's a really tough physical kid who was only about 240 pounds, I think, when he was a freshman, and now he's standing right around 300 pounds. He's physical, has some explosiveness to him. Leverage is the big thing for him. Comes out with really nice pad level, stays low, able to maintain gap integrity. I like Braden Fisk a ton. He's a guy that I think could do a lot of things if Notre Dame's able to land him. And I think that he brings some beef up front that Notre Dame lacks with right now. So I like him. I like him a lot.
Yep. Somebody had asked earlier, Brian Dembo says, is there any chance it was mutual? No. Notre Dame asked Drew Pine. Notre Dame wanted Drew Pine to come in and stay and compete. I have a lot of sources that are close to the program, and Tommy Rees had a lot of respect for Drew Pine as a young man and as a quarterback, and understood the value that having Drew on your roster has, starter or not. And so Notre Dame did not want Drew Pine to leave. They understood that there was a chance it was going to happen if they brought in a grad transfer. I don't think they were prepared for him to do it now, is my read so far on the situation. So I did want to address that question, Brian. That's a very fair question. But yeah, Brian or Ryan, here's my question for you. Do you think that let's just say Braden Fisk picks Notre Dame, do you think he can play a chunk of snaps as a nose guard in the style of defense that we saw from Notre Dame this season?
I do.
And what kind of nose would he be?
I actually like him more as a kind of a penetration style nose personally, but I think that he has enough leverage and enough physicality to play half man, full man, to play some two gap stuff if we're playing straight down. I mean, yeah, I think that the biggest sell to him for me, Brian, is that I think that he's one of those defensive linemen that if you're lined up and he's in a nose and there's maybe, a trade to the other side where the strength call switches, he can just flip out to a 3 and he's fine. You know, like he can kind of do a little bit of everything up front, which I find really intriguing. But in Notre Dame's system, I think he's best suited as a nose. But I think that for him, he can do all like the 2-gap stuff you would want from him if you're Al Golden. But I think also that he does bring some penetration ability that you need to capitalize a little bit, man. I think that just asking him to just play straight down a man in 2-gap, I don't think that it is the best for his game personally, because I think he does have some penetration ability.
In a 2-gap system, he is a 3 technique.
Yeah.
In a 3-4 defense, he's a 5 or a 4-eye technique. In a 4-3 defense that's more built around 1 gapping, I think he'd be a really good nose.
I agree.
In my opinion, that's how I see his game.
With how we thought that Marcus Freeman wanted to work their defense last year a little bit more. I think that as that penetration style nose is definitely more his forte in that system for sure.
Right. John Benko says, I'm just curious as to why there's so much more portal buzz about quarterback when wide receiver seems like a bigger need. I still believe in Tyler Buchner. Number one, I don't think wide receiver is the bigger need. I think the difference is that there's less injury history with what's coming in. The issue at receiver next year is just experience. There's just not a lot of experience there. I think quarterback with Pine is a limited player, great kid, limited player. Steve Angeli's a nice kid, solid potential, but not a championship caliber talent. Doesn't mean he can't be a championship caliber quarterback. Mac Jones isn't a championship caliber talent as a freshman either. I would not have said that about him. But he had the other intangibles, and maybe Steve has those. But talent-wise, it's not a given he's going to turn into the next Mac Jones, right? And Tyler Buchner has a very checkered injury history. Now, he's talented, and you can say you still believe in him, John, and I understand that, and I appreciate that support. Ryan, there aren't many people that are as high on Tyler Buchner's potential as I am. But you also have to be practical. And this is a kid that suffered 2 devastating season-ending injuries where 2 of his football seasons ended with him playing a combined total of less than 3 games. And then he missed his senior season because of COVID, which was not his fault. Not that he had COVID. It's just his state he lived in canceled his senior season, fall season. And so he didn't play. So in 5 years, the kid's played 1 season of quarterback as a full-time quarterback, another season of quarterback as a rotation sort of very limited guy who just basically ran the football, and that's it. You can't just blindly go into the next season saying, no, we'll be fine. We got Tyler. And if he doesn't work out, we get Angeli and Kenny Minchie, who combined have a grand total of 0 career passes. You can't do that. The roster has too much strength right now and the ability to compete next year to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you believe in Tyler, then you should want a portal guy. And here's why I say that. If you believe in Tyler, but you're also still a Notre Dame fan and you care more about Notre Dame's success, then you should want a portal guy. Because here's the reality. From what I've been told, the portal guy's not being told you're starting, which is why there are some kids Notre Dame won't have a chance with, because some kids are going to want guaranteed money or guaranteed playing time, and Notre Dame's not going to do that. So Tyler can beat the guy out, and if he does, great. I mean, I'm not going to complain about that, Ryan, but you absolutely need the body. And some people, well, you got Kenny Minchie now. I don't want Kenny Minchie to have to start as a freshman. Kenny? Yeah. I don't want him to have to. I'd much rather have an older player that also has talent that can play. And that's why I think the portal is a must. And let the best man win. Bring in a really talented portal kid and let the best man win, because it is never a wrong decision, in my opinion, to say, let's get as many talented players as we can that want to compete.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Brian, we talked about this a little bit before, right? But the same people, and I'm not saying this to John, right? Like, I'm just saying just overall, there would be a lot of people that would say, don't take a portal quarterback. And then if Tyler, God forbid, gets hurt again, then they're like, how did you not prepare yourself for this? Well, you're trying to prepare yourself, right? I mean, John, for me, it's just simply, maybe it ends up just being insurance. Like, maybe you take a transfer quarterback and Tyler wins the starting job and he's fantastic and he's what you think that he could be, right? Well, then you still got your insurance though, right? Like, for me, the more talent you have in a room, the more opportunity you have to be excellent in that room. So I think it's just because Brian, I mean, this season would have looked a little bit different, wouldn't you say, if there was not Notre Dame, if they would have just got a good, solid veteran backup quarterback in the portal last year. You would have felt a lot differently about your situation right now, right? Where you are down a couple quarterbacks and now you're talking about Tyler Buckner might have to play in the bowl game, like, because you don't have depth anymore, right? So quarterback is the most important position, not just in football, but in all of sports. Having depth at that position is not a bad thing. And I think that you have to give yourself insurance when your most talented asset in that room right now has struggled to stay on the field. You have to have insurance for it.
Here's a question from Milton Fan. Does Notre Dame need 2 transfer quarterbacks with Drew Pine leaving? No, because of Kenny Minchey.
Right.
If they did not get a quarterback of Kenny Minchey's caliber, then Milton Fan, you might have actually had to make that argument for the exact reason that I just mentioned. You need one portal kid, which is you can't assume Tyler Buckner is going to be ready to play, or not ready to play, ready to go through a full season and able to go through full season. I hope he is, but you don't know that. But between a portal kid, Tyler Buckner, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, I think Notre Dame's going to be fine with numbers of quarterback next year, Ryan.
Yep. Agreed.
If there's another portal kid that wants to come in because he wants to get his degree, he wants to get into kind of like what Hunter Johnson did at Clemson this year. If there's like that kind of situation and he's okay running the scout team, cool. I'm good with that. Sure, let's do it. But that'd be the only reason to take a second quarterback.
I forgot Hunter Johnson transferred back to Clemson until right now.
Yeah. Well, he did it to you. I mean, you've heard the reasons why, right? Like he knew he wasn't going to play. For those who don't, he knew Ryan knows he wasn't going to play. He wants to get into coaching, wanted to finish career there. I think he's getting like a second master's, I believe, because he's like a 6th-year guy. And then this was kind of a helping him get into coaching kind of transition. And then if there's an emergency happens, because Clemson was really thin at quarterback because they had a couple guys leave in the offseason. And so they had Klubnik and DJ, and that was kind of it. So it was like, yeah, I'm helping my program I care about, but then also it's going to help me get ready to go coach and play. So, yeah. Yep, that's where we're at. So next one from Seek and Destroy. What's the word on Angeli? A bigger pine or something different? Ryan, do you want to take a shot at that?
I think he's a lot different than Drew Pine. Personally, Brian, I don't know. I guess my question to Seek and Destroy would be, are you asking me what his role is long-term, or are you asking me what type of player he is? Because I think that they are much different football players. I mean, for me, Drew Pine is smaller quarterback, obviously. I think his arm is suitable. I think his foot quick, I think that he can get out of trouble at times, but I think that Angeli's a little more athletic, a little bigger, and a little bit stronger arm. So I just think that his talent's a little bit higher. But ultimately, I think that if your quarterback room is where you need it to be at Notre Dame, there are probably more backup types long term. But again, I do think that Steve is a bit more talented than Drew Pine, in my opinion.
I think Steve has a higher ceiling for sure. Bigger body, stronger arm. His ball placement needs work. He doesn't have elite school tools, but the thing that he showed in high school and the thing he showed in the spring game, and again, spring game's different than playing the national championship game. That's a cool, calm, and collected kid, man. Like he just doesn't. He's that guy that just blood pressure never changes, right? And I'm saying that kind of like hyperbolically, not literally, but like his blood pressure never changes. First quarter of a home game against UNLV is going to be no different than the fourth quarter game-winning drive of a national championship game against Alabama. He just all right. What do we got to do? What play you calling? All right, cool. Let's go play. And that's one of those intangibles that you do like about him, Ryan. I just don't see elite physical tools. However, if Steve Angeli as a junior was put into the same situation that Drew Pine was put into as a junior, I'd have felt more confident in his ability to make plays. I'll say that. It's just there's better that you can do, in my opinion. And, but knowing Steve Angeli, he's going to make me look really stupid for saying that in a couple of years. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and that's okay. Great. If he does. Awesome. I have no problem with that, right? Ryan's like, yeah, it'd be cool. Another Jersey kid. You know what I mean? But it's just, that's my analysis of it. Milton Fan talking about the transfer stuff. Brian, maybe instead of a transfer losing a season, maybe the transfer should have to be a non-scholarship player, no NIL for 1 year. Again, I feel like that's punishment. I don't want to punish kids for transferring. I don't view sitting out a year as punishing. Let me ask you this. How would that be better? Or like, I don't understand, like, how would that be? don't understand how that'd be better.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's how would that be better than losing a year? I don't lose a year, but now I got to pay my own way and I can't do NIL. Like how's that better?
Yeah, you're hurting a kid in that situation.
I don't want to force a kid to stay somewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like that'd be kind of forcing a kid to stay. I don't want to force kids who ultimately want to leave to stay somewhere. That'd be one of the most hypocritical things I could do. I transferred after my freshman year, and I was a starter as a true freshman.
It'd be bad for
silly.
both sides too.
Right.
If you're forcing a kid to stay.
Right.
Yeah.
What I want to do is create a system that protects kids from liars and cheaters. Number one. Number two, I want to create a system that puts severe penalties on those who cheat from a coaching and a school standpoint. And number three, I want to create a system that really truly helps young people make good, sound, grown-up decisions, not emotional ones.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want. And the transfer portal to me is more of an emotional risk than anything. And combined with the cheaters and all that other stuff, it's a incredibly bad system. I like the idea of putting opportunities in place for kids to be able to transfer right away. If the head coach leaves or a coordinator leaves, you get a window where you can leave. Ryan, do you have any disagreements with that?
Nope.
If you sign an NIL deal, or if you sign your NLI, National Letter of Intent, and there are certain stipulations put in there what the school will do for you, and if they don't honor that, because if you're going to promise a kid he's going to play 20 snaps a game, then you better put it in writing, and if you don't, then you've not honored the terms of our agreement. Our agreement is now void, and I can transfer anywhere I want to go transfer to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the third part of that is I want to create a system that forces these kids to take a deep breath and understand what this means if you transfer and sit out a year, while also giving them an opportunity to get that season back. Not if they go somewhere and they do what they need to do in the classroom, because this should still be about helping these young men to get an education in the classroom, an education in football, and an education in growing up and being men. And I feel like we've really lost sight of two of those three things right now. That's my issue with the current process. It's not about amateurism or punishing kids or putting blame on kids. It's trying to look out for the kids, because nobody is right now. Nobody is right now. And from a decision-making standpoint, a leadership standpoint, people aren't looking out for these kids anymore. And I don't like that.
Yep.
I don't like that. I also do believe that if a school doesn't want a kid to stay, there should be an agreement, a form that you can sign where the school grants that young man immediate eligibility. Hey, you're not in our plans. We think it'd be best for you to transfer. We will sign the form that allows you to transfer and play right away. That's another thing I think should be allowed as well, Ryan. But that's got to be, you know what I mean? So like if a school, hey, if we don't want you don't force a kid to stay there who you don't want to be there, and he'd like to transfer, but he doesn't want to have to sit out a year. Okay, cool. We both agree. Gentleman's agreement. Here we go. And you can leave. But the kid doesn't have to leave. If he wants to stay, you've offered him a scholarship. As long as he's in good standing and doing the right thing, he can stay and get his degree. You can't force him to leave. But if you want him to leave and he wants to leave, then you can sign that agreement and let him go. Now that's a little dangerous, because then you can get into, holding a school hostage and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. If you don't sign it, that gets a little bit tricky. But there should be a process that goes along those lines.
Can I just say I hate that NIL and NLI are so closely together. It's so confusing at times. I'm just like, I think, because sometimes you'll do it where you'll say NIL, but I'm like, I think he's talking about a national letter of intent, but I'm not 100% sure.
NLI, yeah.
It's so annoying, man. So annoying.
Yeah.
I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it something.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How about CFP, cash for play? That's what it is at this point. So.
Yep. You're talking about renaming NIL, right?
Yeah. NIL.
Yes, because they're not doing NIL. It's cash for play. You're absolutely right. It should be NIL. It should absolutely be name, image, and likeness, but it's not. It's cash for play.
Yep.
At a lot of schools, yes. D-Troll Hunter with a super chat. Thank you, sir. Brian, time to dust off those old QB cleats for ball game. Ryan might need you to be OC calling the triple option. Ryan might need you. Yeah. That would be such a bad, awful thing.
All I'm going to say is that I could run the triple option myself if I felt like it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Sure. I got ice in the veins, man. Ice in my
you'd need
veins.
ice on your body.
I will need that. There's no doubt. But
Yeah. I'd be like I'd have a one good throw in me, and then my arm would fall off, and I'd be gassed.
man, I'd be fine, man. They got ice baths. They got those chambers now that helps your body recover.
You keep telling yourself that. Yeah, go join a rec basketball league, play 2 weeks, and come back and talk to me.
Oh man, my shoulder still hurts from playing flag football 2 weeks ago. So
there you go. Adam Shipley, what is the argument against starting Minchie next year with the young team and letting this roster grow together? My big one is, Ryan, I don't think next year's a throwaway year. We're not going to do this Brian Kelly stuff where every year is a rebuilding year for next year, right? If you look at what we expect the roster to look like next year and what I expect everybody else's rosters to look like, if Notre Dame can figure out the quarterback situation, that team's got a chance to play for a championship. I truly believe that. So I'm not wasting a year. Now, could Kenny Minchie be that guy? Maybe. If he beats those other guys out, cool, then he is. If injuries force him into the lineup, sure, then that's what you got to do. But I'm just not creating a situation, Adam, where I'm forcing him to play right away.
Yep.
I'm not doing that.
And I feel like if you have that thought process, then like, every year is the better year, right? It's like after that year, you might not have Joe Alt or Blake Fisher. So it's like, we need to rebuild this offensive tackle room before we can really compete, right? I mean, like there's always going to be those types of situations, but I agree with you. Best man wins. Right. Put the most talent in the room. Let it play out.
Yep, absolutely. Somebody just said at 3:00 that Tom Loy is reporting that Drew isn't playing in the bowl game. I hate to break it to you, but we reported that like an hour and a half ago. So, yeah, that's already been reported here. So, Quinn Kibler says, so taking a step back, Buckner and Angeli are cool and ready to compete. Yeah, they were both at practice yesterday, so it would seem they're ready to compete. Their circumstances are also a little bit different. Neither of them are on the verge of getting their degrees. Drew is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've been talking about the possibility of Drew Pine transferring since the summer. I mean, this isn't a new thing. I think the only thing that's surprising, Ryan, is the timing.
Yes.
But no one should be shocked that Drew's transferring. That's been a topic of conversation since the summer.
You know, I think Drew secretly hates this show. He's like, you know what? I'm going to do this for these guys right now. I'm going to flip the script on them.
Right in the middle of their freaking show.
Yeah. Exactly, man. Because, like, I was mentally prepared to talk about Drew Pine transferring whenever he made the decision, right? But it was just right now was not the time that I thought it was going to happen.
Right. Next question that we have here. It's funny. Drew Pine hates our show. That's hilarious. Brandon Plans says, B. Ryan, could Buckner starting or playing hurt our chances with a talented transfer quarterback? No. If it did, then that's not a kid you want. Look, every quarterback that Notre Dame has talked to, that will talk to, is going to know he's going to have to come and compete for the job. He is. He's going to know that the kid that won our starting quarterback job last year is still going to be on the roster. So it's kind of like every time somebody asks if they lose a game, are they going to lose recruits, right? Like most of these kids are willing to compete. Drew's situation is a little different, Brandon, because he's looking at it as, well, if you had faith in me, why would you be getting a transfer quarterback? Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of the transfer quarterback's attitude too. Like if you had faith in that guy, why are you bringing me in? Right. So, I think it works out that way, but it's a fair question. Sure. I mean, if Tyler Buckner starts in the bowl game and throws for 350 yards and runs for 100 and accounts for 7 touchdowns, I may not want to compete with that guy. And I get that. It's just, I don't see that happening. Oh boy. Keith Wiegand, Mailbag Guys, is Stephen Herron a fit from Notre Dame? Just for those who don't know, Stephen Herron is a defensive end was he kind of a defensive end outside linebacker from Stanford?
He's a bigger guy though, right? Is he like 270?
No, he's no, I don't believe so, unless he's put on a lot of weight. But he was a kid that actually Notre Dame recruited and offered. Yeah, he's about 6'3", 240. He's a stand-up outside linebacker. He fits what Notre Dame does. He'd be a Viper at Notre Dame. I just don't know if he's a dynamic guy and a guy that I would really say moves the needle. However, Ryan, he'd be the kind of veteran that if Justin Adamiola doesn't come back, could be a veteran presence for you while the younger kids develop. And if they're ready, then they take some of his snaps. If they're not, he's a solid player. He's just not going to provide the pass rushing that anywhere close to the pass rush that you got from Foskey. That's the only concern. Is he'd be more of a steady Dalen. You know what? He'd be a poor man's Dalen Hayes would be a good way to describe it. Does a little bit of everything, good, solid player, but not a go get the quarterback all game kind of guy.
Well, I mean, I guess if Joshua Burnham and Aiden Gabira, if you're excited about those guys, though, that's a steady veteran to your point, though, right? So
sure,
might not be the worst thing, but
yep,
interesting.
Just a heads up, people. We're now 2 hours into the show. We're an hour and a half away from the next show. Ryan, we're not going to do the previews of the conference games.
So, we have the articles and everything, so
yeah,
good, right?
we do.
Yeah.
And
we didn't know that this curveball was coming, man. We didn't know it was coming.
Yeah, no, I didn't know it was coming today for sure. I thought it was going to happen after the bowl game. I really did. I didn't think it'd happen now, or at least close to the bowl game. I didn't realize what happened now.
Yep.
Jason Saxon says, Brian and Ryan, with Pine leaving, this opens up a scholarship. Will Notre Dame be open to grab an additional portal player or push the 23 class to 28 to 29? Absolutely. Can I yeah, okay. Go Ryan. Yeah. No, go.
Oh, no, I was going to say that. Yes, we've talked a lot about this where, and again, we continue to put hints out to you guys, right? We have done this. I've said multiple times, and Brian, I know I said it at some points too, right? The number for the 2023 class is 27 right now. Mm-hmm. But depending on how things work out, that could open up a couple spots, right? Like that's possible. Mm-hmm. And we know that we've talked a ton about this, Brian. Notre Dame is still a team that wants to develop through high school recruiting. That's how they want to do it. So they're okay with figuring out a couple more options potentially to continue to add to the class because they're still recruiting, right? They're still doing their due diligence out there, to your point. So yes, it can open up opportunity. There's no doubt about it. But I would say also, I feel like the staff was, kind of had a feeling that this was going to happen, right? It's just the timing was the thing that is going to throw people through the loop a little bit today anyway.
Yeah. This is funny. This is good humor by Jonathan Gabrick. I read this and I was like, at first I'm like, wait a second. And then I read it and it's very funny. He says, I already know Brian's pick for tonight, Utah over USC, because Utah is an elite team and has the best tight end in the country without a doubt. Well played, Jonathan.
Best tight end in the country, actually, according to someone yesterday.
Yes. Very well played, my friend. I enjoyed that very much. Absolutely. Next question we have here is, let's see here. All right. Can we realistically get these guys from lower academic schools? Has admin changed their policy on undergraduate admissions? He's referring to Crooms and Card. Who's Crooms?
I don't know who Crooms is.
Do you know who that might be? I don't know who that is. Hudson Card's a graduate, so it has nothing to do with undergraduate admissions. No, I don't believe, as we've said, I don't believe that Notre Dame has changed their undergraduate admissions. I also think it's a little bit misleading to say lower academic schools. Texas is not on Notre Dame's level, but it's not like he's transferring from
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like he's transferring from like some like Newport News Apprentice. You know what I mean? Like,
or West Virginia.
You know what I mean? Or Salisbury.
No
you know what I mean? Like, Texas is a pretty good school, but no, I mean it is challenging to get kids from undergraduates. It still is. It's not an easy thing. That's why most of the kids Notre Dame is looking at the Fisk kid from Western Michigan, graduate. Yes. Matter of fact, he'll be a 6th-year senior next year. Mm-hmm. He's graduated a minute ago. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a little bit ago. Hudson Card's going to be a graduate in December. It's a graduate transfer. I don't know
I've interviewed Braden Fisk when I think it was like September or November, and he had already graduated the previous year. So yes, he's definitely a graduate transfer, no doubt.
Yeah.
We need to go get a bunch of kids from Frostburg State, man. That's a lot of really good academic kids go there. So
Ryan's just trying to piss me off today. Brandon Plessner, B. Ryan, do you think Notre Dame will 100% take a portal quarterback regardless? For those who don't know why that exchange, Ryan went to Frostburg State for a year. I went to Salisbury University. They're rivals, so that's why Ryan is saying that. Just in case there's new people who don't understand that. Do you think Notre Dame will 100% take a portal quarterback regardless if they're able to find a talent that's worthy of battling for the starting job? I mean, they're going to need to transfer portal quarterback no matter what. I don't think that is really something they can afford to miss on. They can't afford to not bring in a guy that's a starting caliber guy. And I don't think they will. I'm just going to say this to y'all. There have been a lot of quarterbacks that have expressed interest to Notre Dame through back channels, where they're the ones reaching out. Notre Dame's like, hey, look, we can't really engage in this right now, blah, 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 blah. But trust me, there are a lot of kids who have expressed interest in Notre Dame. Could you put your phone down out of the screen, Ryan, please?
Sorry, I just had to text you something, which is hysterical.
So
sorry.
It's all good. Tyler Robinson, I haven't watched film of Minchie. How is he? Does he have arm talent? Ryan, I'm just going to wind you up and let you go on this one, buddy.
Yes, he is. So, Tyler, if you watch his junior film, liked a lot of what I saw from Kenny Minchie. Senior film, just from an arm strength perspective first, before we talk about the arm talent, because arm talent's kind of a you see it now, right? Okay, cool. Arm talent is definitely a combination of a bunch of different things, right? So arm strength, junior to senior year, I thought Minchie took a huge step forward. I thought working the intermediate level of the field, a lot more zip, a lot more easy velocity on the ball. But arm talent for me is a combination of the ability to change arm angles, the ability to throw with touch, the ability to layer the football accurately. And I think that Minchie always had those things, man. I think he's a very accurate quarterback. I think he knows how to change arm speeds, which for me means to take something off the ball when he needs to throw with touch, different arm speeds, right? To speed up that release or slow down the release. And I think that those things were always inherently there with Kenny Minchie. On his junior film, you could see the touch. But the fact that he also added more arm strength to the conversation, kid's a very talented thrower, no doubt.
Yep. Irish Blooded said it too, Ryan. He's just an absolute natural arm. Just flicks the ball and it goes far. I mean, yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Next question that we have here from, let's go down here to Jacob Watson with a super chat. Thank you, Jacob. Jacob says, what transfers do you guys want to see Notre Dame bring in? Well, Jacob, we had a show about that yesterday. You know, I have to be careful. So what y'all have to understand is, like, some people were upset that we wouldn't name names yesterday. Well, here's the deal. If I start naming names, then the people that give me names are going to be like, dude, I'm not giving you names anymore. I asked you not to put those names out there. And the reason it's smart is because let's say Notre Dame is recruiting a kid that not a lot of people are on. They hear Notre Dame's on that kid, then everyone's going to say, oh, Notre Dame's on that kid. Let me look at that kid. And that makes no sense. Why would I want to do that to them? And for no other reason than selfishly, I don't want that guy to be pissed at me and not talk to me anymore. And then we don't get intel for you guys. So if somebody asks me not to report something, I'm not going to report it. And, and so then the option is, well, then just don't talk about it at all. Well, some people are going to say that, but most people are okay. Just saying, hey, look, receivers in need. There's guys they're after. When it's appropriate, we'll mention their names. So I think quarterback is a big one. We did talk about names there because they're out there. Hudson Card is obviously one. We talked about Cade McNamara yesterday. I never felt like he was high on Notre Dame's board. They liked him, but not as much as other guys. We could see he's now going to Iowa. We saw Michael Pratt. Michael Pratt's a guy that we like, that if he gets in the portal, Notre Dame should look at. Brennan Armstrong's not a guy we spent a lot of time on yesterday. He's in the portal. A lot of other people are focusing on him. I think there's a lot of people looking at the numbers he put up last year, Ryan, and I get it. But it's just it's a no for me. I don't think he's as bad as he was this year. He's not close to being as bad as he was this year. He's closer to being the guy he was last year than he is the guy this year, number one. But 2 points. Number one is you can't promise me that he wasn't broken. And as we've seen with quarterbacks in the past, when like Dane Christ going to Kansas, when a guy gets broke, you can't automatically guarantee he's going to get fixed. Number one. And number two, I just don't like the fit, to be honest with you. I don't think he's what he was last year. I don't. Great system, great town around him, bad defensive league. That's how I feel. If Notre Dame landed Brennan Armstrong because they missed on other guys, would I be upset? No, I wouldn't be upset. I'd feel a whole lot better about Tyler Buckner's chances of winning the starting job, though. He turns the ball over a little too much for me. His ball placement's okay, but he had some dudes with some stupid catch radiuses in 2021, which helped him too. But he's just not a guy that I would say moves the needle a ton for me, to be completely honest with you. That's just me.
Man, he had some silly catch radiuses. Silly.
Oh,
yeah. Keaton Thompson is like 6'4". Dontavian Wicks is their small guy at like 6'2", 210. And they remember that tight end last year that was like 6'7",
oh, yeah.
or whatever?
Was it McGee, right? was his last name? What was his name?
I can't remember. He got drafted this year in the 4th round, I think, 3rd or 4th round.
I thought it was McGee. I could be wrong on that. Let me look.
He was the Oklahoma State
he's like,
transfer.
the 6'7" kid. Yeah.
Yeah, he's massive.
No, Jelani Woods.
Jelani Woods. Oklahoma
Yeah.
State transfer. Yep. That's him.
Yep. Yeah, because Dontavius Hicks was their small guy of the guys that played a ton, and he was like 6'2", 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah.
K-Tawan Thompson is 6'4". Rayshon Henry was 6'3". Jelani Woods was 6'7". I mean, it was just dumb.
And then there was little Billy Kemp at like 5'9".
I know, right? That was hilarious. And Malachi Fields is 6'4", 220. Yeah, they had some big boys. Big boys running out around. And they would make play. He'd give them a chance to make plays, but it's just the margin for error is a little thinner. Yeah. Than it would at Notre Dame because of the competition. So I don't know what it is. Even last year, like, he was a good player and he was a dangerous player in that system, but he was a system guy. System guys make me nervous because Notre Dame doesn't run that system. Same thing with Sam Hartman. That's why Sam Hartman's a no-go for me. Sam Hartman is a guy that has to run that system, in my opinion, to play and produce at that level. I don't think he's a guy that can go run a pro-style system and be good. I just don't. I could be completely wrong on that. I'm just giving you my opinion on that one. I know in this instance, you and I agree on those two. Well, there's others we don't agree on, but those two we agree on. Yeah.
Well, we definitely agree on the system talk, because I think for a guy to transcend the system, then he has to have traits to transcend a system, right? And I just, when I watch Brennan Armstrong's arm is fine. It's okay. But like when I watch Sam Hartman, I'm just like, that ball just dies on it, man. Like the ball just doesn't come out with pace. I'm just like, I don't think he transcends the system. So,
yep. Agree. Next question. We have a super chat from Tristan Mize. Thank you, Tristan. Just wanted to say appreciate Drew for stepping in when needed. Also, is Keon Keeley back to Notre Dame an afterthought? On the Keon Keeley stuff, I don't know why people keep talking about that. Yes, it's an afterthought. It should be an afterthought anyway.
It's because he hasn't signed with anybody or hasn't committed to anyone yet. So,
it's not because he's sitting at home wondering, gee, should I go back to Notre Dame? I wish it was. Trust me, y'all, nothing would make me happier. But that's not it.
Yep.
Now, the first part, just want to say appreciate Drew for stepping in when needed. 1,000% agree. And the one thing that Drew Pine did this year is he showed that as a tough kid. Because Drew took some blows physically, emotionally, and mentally this year. And handled it well. And he just didn't play great a lot of the time. But from that part, Ryan, I mean, and then to bounce back from the start he had, the way that he did, And I don't even mean the Cal game. Just go back and look at the way he played at the end of the Marshall game. Some of the throws and the interception he made. He was terrible in the first half against Cal, but he battled back because that's what Drew does. He's a tough kid.
He absolutely
He's a tough kid. He really is, and he's a kid that I have a lot of respect for. He's just not a great player and didn't play great this year.
I hope he does really well wherever he ends up. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. Doubt. He will be one of those kids that you definitely pull for. Not every transfer is that way for me. I'm going to be honest with you.
I get that.
Yeah. Jonathan Gabrick, does Card have 2 years or 3 years of eligibility? I feel like I've heard two different things with him. I believe you guys said 2 years, but I didn't remember for sure. We have said 2 years.
It's 2. Yeah.
Correct. So Hudson Card was a member of the 2020 recruiting class.
So we got the free 2020.
Right. So the issue with kids like that is whether they redshirt or played, it's still their redshirt. Mm-hmm. Like 2019 kids that redshirted in 19 also got an extra year in 20.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what happened with, with Drew Pine reverse. Drew had the 2020 and then he redshirted in 2021, which technically made him a redshirt freshman. Well, Hudson Card played in 2021 and he played this year. So he has 2 years left. Now he could have 3 years left if he can take another redshirt. So like, let's say he came in and said, hey, let's just say hypothetically Hudson Card wanted to be at Notre Dame and Notre Dame had a senior quarterback that had 1 year left and was a star. Like, let's say he was, Bryce Young is their quarterback for next year, right? Hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, hey, look, come, we're going to redshirt you next year. Bryce is going to go to the NFL, and then you're going to start for 2 years after that. He could do that because his 2020 redshirt doesn't count. So in theory, he has 3 years left.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't have 3 years left to play.
He has 2 years.
2 years left to play.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. Is he has 3 years left? No, he has 3 years of eligibility left as far as he could take a red shirt and still play, but he only has 2 years left to play.
Mm-hmm.
So if he got hurt early last year, he could get a medical and still have 2 years left after that.
If Hudson Card is your quarterback this year in the hypothetical, and he plays this full season and he plays next season, he doesn't have a third year. He only has those 2 seasons, to Brian's point.
Right. So hopefully that answers it. Somebody said this, and this is very true. And Siggy says, biggest news today is Michael Vincent coming back. I'm not saying it's the biggest news today, but we haven't talked about that. That is big for Notre Dame. We talked yesterday about we weren't sure. There was a couple last week, or we talked about, I'm not sure if Michael Vincent has another year left.
Yeah.
Him coming back for a 6th year may not seem like a big deal to people, but that's one of the best long snappers Notre Dame has had in a long time. Short and long snappers Notre Dame has had in a while. And that's saying something because they have 2 dudes in the NFL right now that are snappers. He's very good. Very good. And it's why you never hear his name during games, ever.
Who are the 2 kids right now? John Jansen?
Scott Daly and J.J. Jansen, yeah.
J.J. Jansen, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I believe Scott Daly's still in the NFL, correct? I believe he's still in the NFL as well.
I know
he was at the beginning of the year. He was at the beginning of the year. So I do know that. So let me just go look it up because now we're going to have to know. So Lions, yeah, he's still the Lions long snapper. Correct.
Nice.
He was with the Cowboys in 18, and then he spent 19 with the San Antonio Commanders and 20 with the New York Guardians, and then the Lions signed him in 2021, and he is still on the team in 2022. So there you go. And he beat out Dan Mulbaugh on the depth for that job, Brian. 17-year veteran, Dan Mulbaugh. Never heard of him.
He sent the kid a guy to retirement, huh? Good for him.
Yep. So yes, they are he's good. Michael Vincent's good. That is actually yes, that is a very good thing for Notre Dame.
Because you're already going to have to replace your kicker and your punter from this year. So having a long snapper back's nice.
Here's one interesting for you, Ryan. TB12 for Heisman. If you could have one of David Bailey from Stanford or Deshaun McCullough from Indiana, who would you guys want? It's an interesting one, Ryan.
I mean, I would take either, if I'm being honest. I actually kind of like David Bailey, the flashes I saw from this year, but I would go with McCullough. I would. And it's mostly because I think that McCullough is just a little more talented. I think David Bailey's talented too, but McCullough's long, he's athletic, and his dad coaches already on the staff as well. So it would be nice to keep the McCulloughs in the family. But I do like both, though. I do like both.
Can I say this?
Yes.
Thanks. So
no, you can't.
would it increase the odds that Dylan McCullough stays a little longer if his son's at Notre Dame? If it does, then that's my answer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both good football players.
Yes.
I feel like maybe that would convince Dylan McCullough to stay a little longer, and that would make me happy because I want Dylan McCullough to stay in Notre Dame as long as possible. So I'm being a little selfish here, but look, they're both good football players. There's no wrong answer there.
Both very talented.
And you may say, well, I like Deshaun because he's a little longer, and I like longer guys. I like David because he's a little bit twitchier, and I like twitchier guys. I mean, there's a little different styles, but I mean, they'd both be good answers. They'd both be good pickups, in my opinion. But if one could help me convince Dylan McCullough to stay longer, then that's the one that I want to go with.
Yes.
Okay,
agreed.
That would be my answer. And if
I wouldn't feel bad taking either one because both those programs are so down right now.
Yes.
Which would be very
big
down.
time. Indian Nation with a super chat. Thank you very much. What's your guys' take on kickoff returns this year?
Terrible blocking.
All five of them. Yeah, I mean, I just really feel like, Ryan, that they just never got enough opportunity to get it going. It's like you practice it, and you go like 8 games without having to get a return. But yeah, that was the one part of the special teams this year that was bad.
Yes.
It was not good.
You couldn't really point to another part of the special teams that wasn't at least good or to very good.
That could be
right?
controlled by coaching.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep. This is asked, was the decision, was the Drew Pine decision, was this Drew Pine's decision? Sorry, Jim, I'm going to be able to read here in a second, buddy. I apologize. Was this Drew Pine's decision or Notre Dame's? If Pine's, didn't he put the team in a tough spot for the bowl game? We talked about this earlier. From what I believe, this was his decision. The timing of it was 100% his decision. Notre Dame did not ask him to leave. They did not force him to leave. Notre Dame wanted him to come back and compete for the job. The only question that we have, Ryan, is did he have to leave now based on the timing of the portal? That would be my question. In regard to the tough spot thing, if he had to leave now and there was no other option to stay through the bowl game, then yeah, that's a problem for me. If it's a thing where the nature of the portal and how the schedule goes, he had to go in now or he was going to get passed up and schools were going to take other quarterbacks and the timing of it was such that he couldn't do it, sure. Then he has to do what he has to do. But I love this. Jim puts a super chat in to make me feel better. So I screw up and can't read, and Jim gives a super chat. You're my guy, Jim. I love you.
Jim, I can't read either.
I'm gonna screw up more people's stuff. Like, but no, I appreciate you. Very much, Jim. But there's just I don't want to hammer Drew too much because I want to find out the particulars of whether he could or couldn't come back and still go in the portal. But yeah, I think he is leaving his team in a little bit of a lurch. And somebody said, "Hey, look, Notre Dame's doing what's best for them. He's got to do what's best for him." That would only make sense to me if Notre Dame was bringing in a transfer kid to play in the bowl game.
Right.
This is for next year. That'd be like saying, well, since they got a commitment from Kenny Minchie, F you, I'm leaving. Like, it's no different for me than that. It isn't. It's no different because the kid won't be on the team till next year. So, yeah. Somebody said it's because the portal opens on 12/5. I know when the portal opens, but it doesn't mean that you have to go in right then. There you go, Jim Haller. There you go, Ryan.
Jim, you're the best, man.
We love
you,
Jim.
Best.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So, Ryan, I think that's going to do it for today's show. So we were going to do previews of the conference games. Here's who we got. Let's just do it here real quick, Ryan. USC, Utah. Who you got?
You got USC.
Okay. What's the other games we picked? We have we did the Tulane UCF one. Who'd you pick there?
I picked Tulane in that one as well.
Okay. I'm going UCF because I think Tulane's going to have a little bit of distractions from all the nonsense about their coach is going to leave. Now he's not going to leave. Their quarterback's going to go in the portal, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm going with there. Big 12 championship game is up first tomorrow at noon on ABC. TCU's a 1.5 point favorite, Ryan. Number 10 TCU. Or number 10 Kansas State against number 3 TCU. Who you got?
This has burned me a little bit in the past, but I picked TCU to get upset tomorrow. So 42-37 Kansas State.
You look at your record, Ryan. What's your overall record on the predictions this year?
It wasn't that bad until last week.
Last week was rough.
It was rough.
0 for 8's not good, right? You're 38-26. I think like 12 of those losses were TCU because you kept picking TCU to lose like every time. We had them probably like 4 times. Going to change this week? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. I went with TCU. And look, there's a lot of reasons why it would make sense to go with K-State. They're playing really good football. I mean, the last 3 games, they've been really good. They've got a salty defense that I think can somewhat slow them down. And the other part is rematches are hard to win. But I just kind of feel like, K-State gave TCU all they could and still blew it 18-point lead. I just saw that. I saw it. That's great. I got to pull that up. TJ Stalika, 0-8, almost as bad as Kelly in your 6 bowls. That's so awesome. Oh, my goodness gracious.
There's been a lot of funny comments today.
Yeah, that was really well played, TJ. At the end of the day, I just think TCU has too much firepower. And TCU's defense has been been pretty good in some of these bigger games. And so I just I like the way TCU's playing. I mean, they held Iowa State to 14. Shouldn't be too hard. They held Texas to 10 and really held Texas to 3. And the 28 Baylor they had to earn those. I mean, they were not easy points in that game, Ryan. And so I just feel like TCU is the better team. I think they have the better quarterback. Would I be shocked if K-State wins? No, not at all. It's hard to win rematches, and K-State's really good. I just like look, TCU keeps showing me they know how to win these games. Kansas State's 0 and whatever against teams in the top 25. That's what at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to for me. Next game, Ryan, is 4:00. It is the SEC championship, LSU in Georgia. Number 14 LSU, number 1 Georgia. Georgia's a 17.5-point favorite in this game.
And they're covering it, Brian.
They're
34-14 Georgia over LSU.
I think I might have changed. I initially had 41-24, and I think I changed it to 41-20. I did. So I do have them covering. I don't think this game's will be close. Forget the whole BK doesn't show up in big games and all that kind of stuff. It's a bad matchup for LSU. Their O-line's a mess. Their offense has really not played well recently. I mean, you can go UAB.
Jaden Daniels is banged up too.
Real banged up. They've been pretty mediocre offensively most of their last game. They scored 13 points against Arkansas. They scored 23 against Texas A&M, and they scored late to get to 23 against Texas A&M. So I'm not a big fan of what the momentum LSU has or doesn't have coming this game. I think this is going to be a rout, in my opinion. And Georgia's going to be fired up. And Georgia started kind of playing a lot better down the stretch, in my opinion, as they kind of ramped up for the bowl game.
I feel like when they've been challenged by actual good teams too, Georgia's played their best ball. Correct. They don't have to sleepwalk through 100%. Games.
That's the difference between them and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Is they slept walk in those games, but then when they needed to, they could turn it on. Ohio State showed that they can't turn it on.
Exactly. Yep.
Last two, 8:00, Fox, Purdue, 8-4 at Michigan. That's such a bad matchup. Michigan's here's how bad they think that LSU is in this matchup. LSU is number 14. And they are a bigger underdog than against number 1 than 8-4 unranked Purdue is against number 2 Michigan.
Oof.
So yeah, that says a lot. 16.5-point favorites. Ryan, is there any doubt about who wins this game?
Now, I had it a little closer than the spread. I think I picked 28-17 in my pick just because I know Donovan Edwards balled out last week against Ohio State, but I do think not having Blake Corum for the stretch here is going to be tough. You know what I mean? I think that Donovan Edwards is a good football player, but I think he's an even better football player when you combine his talents with Blake Corum. So I still think Michigan wins and ends up winning pretty convincing. But the one thing about Purdue is that I think Purdue actually plays pretty decent defense, right? So I think that they'll keep the score down a little bit, but I still had a 28-17 Michigan.
I am going to learn my lesson from last year, Ryan, and I'm going to go with Michigan in a blowout in this game because last year I said the same thing. They beat Ohio State. They're going to have an emotional I'm not saying the same thing as you. I'm saying somewhat. But I said last year they're going to have an emotional letdown after beating Ohio State. First time beating Ohio State in a decade, emotional letdown. Iowa's not going to get them fired up. They know they're going to beat Iowa, and good Lord, I was wrong. They crushed Iowa last year, and I think the same thing happens to Purdue. I think Purdue can score more than Iowa did last year because they can throw the ball. They're just not going to be able to protect Aiden O'Connell for 4 quarters.
No.
I just don't think they have enough firepower to get it done. I do think they'll make it close early because I do think Michigan will have a little bit of a wake-up call early after the win over Ohio State, but I just think this team is so disciplined, and that's where I give Jim Harbaugh a lot of credit. I mean, they just went into last week's game and said, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. We're going to punch you in the face, and I don't think Purdue has the horses to make it. And then the last one, Ryan, we have North Carolina, reeling North Carolina, losers of 2 straight, number 23 in the country against number 9, Clemson, who suffered a brutal loss to South Carolina last week, blew a 23-14 lead, lost at home to South Carolina. Who wins this game?
I took Clemson in this one. I put it down at 31-20. I wanted to make it more convincing for Clemson, but I just can't trust that Clemson offense, man. Like, they're just so up and down right now. So I feel like right around 30 points is probably where the number is going to be for Clemson. I think North Carolina's broken a little bit, man. I think they are. And so give me 31-20 Clemson with the victory, with the dub.
If we didn't hear all these rumors about North Carolina's quarterback jumping in the portal and going to Bama, I might think Clemson has a chance to win because matchup-wise, there's some things to like. You know, I mean, did you see what Spencer Rattler did to that secondary last week?
It's very true.
But I just feel like North Carolina, to your point, is just not a confident team right now. They're not a healthy team right now, and their offense has lost all of its rhythm. They're not good up front. I think Clemson can beat their front up. And I think all the stuff about Drake May is a distraction. I really do. I think it's going to be a distraction. Now, if they're able to kind of use that as a rallying cry, I think they can beat Clemson. I will not be shocked if North Carolina beats Clemson. If North Carolina gets back to playing like they did a month ago, they can beat Clemson.
They can outscore them. They can cause some problems for sure. No doubt.
And I don't trust DJ to be able to look, if it comes down to DJ and Drake May in a shootout,
you take Drake. You take Drake.
Yes. Yes. I just don't think it's going to come to that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I think North Carolina.
So we did get the previews in. We just did a really shortened version because I'm tapped out, man. I'm like, it's all this stuff is just a little nuts for me. 4:30, everybody. So less than an hour. Irish break. I may be tapped out, but IB is not done, my friends. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers, and my man Vince D'Addario today at 4:30. They're going to go live with a special edition rapid fire. They're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And of course, the Drew Pine news is going to be at the top of their list of discussion. So you're definitely want to check that out. It's something that we're going to kind of try out. We may kind of take this into the offseason as just kind of a consistent, like just a live, quick, rapid fire show. These are going to do. We'll see how it goes tonight. So everybody, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com because I'll have no problem responding to people there. I just got to stop talking. I need to turn the screen off. I need to go get something to eat because I'm tapped out. I'm looking at the sidelines like, hey, can I get a sub in here, please? Because I'm done. But appreciate y'all so very much. Paul, great to hear about the improvement that your friend is making. We will continue to keep in our prayers. Absolutely. So small improvement, but a small improvement is better than a step back. No question about it. So anyway, everybody have a great rest of your day. Make sure you get with the guys here in 45 minutes, 4:30 p.m. IB Nation Sports Talk. They're going to have a rapid fire special edition. Check that out. Until then, Sunday is when we'll be back. We will go live when the committee goes live to talk about the bowls. We'll kind of talk about the rankings. We'll talk about the bowl matchups as they come. Then, of course, once Notre Dame's bowl is matched up, we'll then dive into that as well. So for Ryan, I'm Brian. Have a great rest of your Friday. We'll talk to you again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.